Chapter 8:18. Faced with Long Fei Ye's resolute inquiry, Tang Li realized that it was Long Fei Ye's first time begging him. Accurately speaking, it wasn't begging him. If it was Long Fei Yi, he wouldn't have become the Tang sect's sect master. Today he wasn't qualified to make Long Fei Yi beg him. Growing up together, no one understood Long Fei Yi better than Tang Li. Actually, Tang Li had already vaguely guessed the truth before, but he wasn't willing to believe it and couldn't accept it. Now facing Long Fei Yi, he couldn't agree, but he also couldn't refuse. "Brother, it's just a woman." When he said this, even he felt that it was against his heart. He had seen Long Fei Yi make too many exceptions for Han Yunxi. He had also seen how the conservative him, who was seriously obsessed with cleanliness, hugged that woman in front of everyone and deeply kissed that woman. It was simply spoiling her to the bone and loving her to the blood. This kind of person, he had spoiled her for 4 years. How could he not want her just like that? "Brother, even if you don't care about her identity, even if everyone in East Qin doesn't care about her identity, what about her?" Tang Li asked seriously. "She will hate you. She will only think that you are using her." Back then, Long Fei Yi hid Han Yunxi's identity because he was worried about her hatred, right? The hatred that came from the Western Qin princess towards the East Qin crown prince. Two people who loved each other would always be equal. No one had the right to insist that others do the same because of their own sacrifice. There was also no reason to believe that others would do the same. Just like how he could ignore her identity, but he didn't expect her to do the same. Tang Li's words made Long Fei Ye's heart sink. Tang Li sighed. "Brother, actually I quite like Ning Jing, but..." He gave a bitter smile. "How could she really like me and be willing to give birth to my child? Let's not deceive ourselves." Ever since they got married, he had been tormenting Ning Jing a lot, especially during the month they were away, but there had been no news of that woman's pregnancy. It was obvious that she had taken medicine. There was no doubt that Tang Li's feelings for Ning Jing were beyond Long Fei Ye's expectations. However, he didn't have time to think too much about it. He asked coldly, "Do you know who kidnapped her?" Seeing that Long Fei Yi was no longer forcing him to help, Tang Li was secretly relieved. He only said one sentence and Long Fei Yi immediately understood. He said, "Ning Jing and I have been in a cold war for the past few days. After I went out, I went back twice, but I didn't find Ning Jing in the house. Last night, I waited until midnight before she came back. She was frightened when she saw me." Before the Apricot Woods conference, Tianning's military officers had already left. Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's businesses in Medical City had long been handed over to Ning Nua to manage, so it had nothing to do with Ning Jing. What could Ning Jing have to do in Medical City to keep her busy until the middle of the night? Moreover, she'd done it behind Tang Li's back. "Brother, maybe Ning Jing is in Medical City. I already sent people to investigate the battlefield last night. If Ning Jing isn't on the battlefield, then he's definitely in Medical City. He must be the one who kidnapped Han Yunxi." Tang Li glanced at the purple muslin robe in Long Fei Ye's hands and said seriously, "Brother, at a time like this, there are only two kinds of people who kidnapped Han Yunxi. One is from East Qin while the other is from Western Qin." Ning Qing. Long Fei Yi narrowed his eyes. If East Qin wanted to kidnap Han Yunxi, they didn't need to go through so much trouble. They could just ask Chu Shifeng for her, so it had to be someone from Western Qin. The kidnappers must have torn apart Han Yunxi's robes to see if she had a phoenix birthmark. Chu Tianyin of the Nether clan was still from Western Qin. Over the past few days he'd sent Gu Beiyue letters asking about Han Yunxi's origins. The Li and Black clans still hadn't found any clues. As for the Wind clan, Long Fei Yi was absolutely certain that they wouldn't kidnap Han Yunxi now. If they wanted to kidnap her, they would have done so long ago. Seeing Long Fei Ye's dangerous expression, Tang Li knew that he'd recovered. "Have you sent people to follow Ning Jing?" Long Fei Yi asked. "Don't worry about me taking care of things. I've already made arrangements. Ning Jing didn't leave the house last night, but she went out early this morning. I've already sent people to keep an eye on her," Tang Li replied. Long Fei Yi nodded and stared coldly into Tang Li's eyes. Tang Li didn't notice anything strange at first, but he quickly averted his gaze. "Big bro, it's not that I'm helping you, but, in any case, I can't accept this. Why should a woman shoulder the grudges of the previous generations? Did she do anything wrong?" Long Fei Yi asked. "Big bro, aren't you shouldering the grudges of the previous generations? He's the same as you. Neither of you have a choice. You're fated to be enemies in this lifetime. Won't your heart skip a beat if you spend every day with an enemy? Tang Li asked seriously. Long Fei Yi was silent for a long time. In the end, he said indifferently, at the very least, this prince has to ask her personally. Tang Li hesitated for a long time. In the end, he used a stalling tactic. Fine, I promise you. As long as Han Yunxi doesn't hate you or resent you, I'll help you. If she resents you, then don't blame the Tang sect for being merciless. Tang Li added, also Han Yunxi is an exception. The Tang sect won't show mercy to anyone else, whether they're from the Fiend clan or the D clan. Of course. The killing intent in Long Fei Ye's eyes was even stronger than Tang Li's. The two brothers returned to Medical City to wait for news from their spies. Long Fei Yi wrapped the tattered purple muslin robe around his arm and tied it tightly before pulling down his wide sleeve. Tang Li glanced at it and felt his heart ache for no reason. In fact, he really hoped that Han Yunxi would resent Long Fei Yi. That way Long Fei Yi would be able to fight a decisive battle with Western Qin. However, his heart ached when he saw this scene. If Han Yunxi really resented Long Fei Yi, how much would Long Fei Ye's heart hurt? In love, whoever loved more would suffer a crushing defeat. Tang Li suddenly realized that his heart was actually more ruthless than Long Fei Ye's. Or perhaps he didn't love her enough. He just liked her a little. After calming down, Long Fei Yi had a lot of things to do. Since Ning Qing and Ning Jing were suspects, it meant that Ning Qing was still in Medical City. He asked Vice Academy head Shen to send more people to guard the city gates. At the same time, the poison guards and mercenaries sent by Han Yunxi also arrived. Fortunately, these subordinates still obeyed Long Fei Ye's orders. Long Fei Yi made careful arrangements and waited for news from the spy following Ning Jing. At the same time, he replied to the letters from the Tang sect and Bailey Juanfu. These two letters were received before he even arrived at Medical City. They were all letters inquiring about Han Yunxi's background. He only replied with 5 words, rumors can't be trusted. He didn't give any explanation. After he finished dealing with the matters at hand, Tang Li immediately rushed over. Brother, she's in the apricot forest. In the apricot forest. Tang Li was still outside the door, so Long Fei Yi flew out. Tang Li was almost knocked over, so he hurriedly caught up. Brother, Ning Jing circled the city several times and finally snuck into the apricot forest. The apricot forest wouldn't be open to the public unless it was a medical academy event. Ning Jing circled the city to avoid being noticed. Moreover, her purpose in entering the apricot forest was even more obvious. Su Donglin followed, but Long Fei Yi ordered, guard your own territory. Don't come over. Long Fei Yi had to be on guard. This was a trick to lure the tiger away from the mountain. As long as he could determine where Ning Qing was with his current martial arts skills, let alone one Ning Qing, even 3 Ning Chengs wouldn't be able to escape. Under the secret guidance of the spy, Long Fei Yi saw an abandoned courtyard in the distance. In order to avoid suspicion, Tang Li hid in the dark and didn't appear. Your Highness, this subordinate saw Ning Jing enter that courtyard with my own eyes. This subordinate didn't dare to get too close, so I kept watch here. Until now, I haven't seen her come out, nor have I seen anyone enter or leave. The spy reported in a low voice. Very good. As soon as Long Fei Ye's voice fell, his figure flew out so fast that no one could see him clearly. All of his worries, fears, and longing were unimportant at this moment. He just wanted to see her. However, when Long Fei Yi broke in, he saw Ning Jing sitting alone in the courtyard, crying. The Duke of Qin? Ning Jing exclaimed and suddenly stood up. Long Fei Yi sensed that something was wrong, so he ignored her and immediately broke into the house. However, he searched all over the house, but he didn't see the person he was looking for. When he returned to the courtyard, Ning Jing's face was still covered in tears and she looked confused. Of course, this was all an act. Long Fei Yi didn't linger but turned to leave. This courtyard was abandoned, but one of the rooms had a bed, a table, and clean chairs. Someone had lived here before, and it wasn't Ning Jing at all. This really was a trick to lure the tiger away from its mountain. As soon as Long Fei Yi left, he hurried to the city gates himself. Fortunately, the 4 gates were all quiet, so no one tried to force their way in. Su Donglin, where's Tang Li? Long Fei Yi asked in a low voice. He's still in Apricot Grove, Su Donglin replied. Tell him to stop pretending. Ning Jing has long suspected the Tang clan, Long Fei Yi said. Ning Jing must have suspected Tang Li, which was why she had Ning Qing leave ahead of time. That was why they'd come empty-handed. At this point there was no need for Tang Li to pretend anymore. It was fine if they didn't want Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's weapons trade. The Tang clan's assassination weapons were East Qin's greatest help. Before Su Donglin could find Tang Li came over on his own. Big bro, if you guard the East Gate, I'll guard the West Gate. Seal all the secret passageways. I refuse to believe that Ning Qing can grow wings and fly out. Where's Ning Jing? Long Fei Yi asked. I tied her up. She can choose between her life and the weapons trade. Tang Li spoke confidently. Big bro, even if she chooses the weapons trade, I can find all the accounts and sources of the goods. In any case, we'll definitely complete the mission. If this was any other time, Long Fei Yi would have told Tang Li to leave without a word, but he didn't this time. He looked at Tang Li strangely. Tang Li avoided his gaze and laughed out loud. This clan head has been waiting for this day for a long time. Big bro, if we still can't find Ning Qing, we'll hang that woman under the city gates tomorrow and expose her to the sun for 3 days and 3 nights. I refuse to believe that Ning Qing won't come out. Long Fei Yi said, she's your legal wife. Deal with her as you see fit. Then it's settled. Tang Li said cheerfully as he left, hiding the disappointment in his eyes well. Long Fei Yi was still keeping watch and searching, but Ning Qing had long left Medical City with Han Yunxi. They'd left last night without alerting anyone. How did they leave Medical City? Chapter 8:19. Medical City was so heavily guarded, so how did Ning Qing manage to sneak Han Yunxi out of the city? Actually, Ning Qing had already taken Han Yunxi out of Medical City the day she regained consciousness. Ning Jing had only gone out in the middle of the night to test Tang Li. Currently, Ning Qing and Han Yunxi were on their way to Tianing. Han Yunxi was nestled in the carriage while Ning Qing personally drove the carriage. A few attendants accompanied them as protection. Han Yunxi was exhausted to death, but she couldn't fall asleep. She stuck her head out and asked, "Hey, how did you escape?" She had been blindfolded and taken out of Medical City. It was obvious that Ning Qing didn't trust her completely. Ning Qing drove the carriage as fast as he could, his eyes looking straight ahead as he asked, "Has your highness thought it through?" What she needed to think about was naturally acknowledging her status as the princess of Western Qin and shouldering the heavy responsibility of avenging and restoring Western Qin. Han Yunxi laughed coldly. "Do I even have the right to think about it?" Ning Qing finally turned to glare at her. Ever since she had compared the D clan to the Nether clan, Ning Qing had stopped treating her with respect. Now Han Yunxi felt that he was real. "Why are you so fierce? I don't have the right to think about it in the first place, so why do you have to make me think about it? In any case, even if I don't want to, I still have to go with you, right?" The more Han Yunxi spoke, the colder Ning Qing's gaze became. Still, Han Yunxi wasn't afraid. "Are you going to let me go if I tell you that I don't want to?" Finally, Ning Qing's eyes filled with disappointment and disdain. "You can choose to refuse, but I won't let you go, so..." Before Han Yunxi could finish, Ning Qing continued, "I won't force you, but I will kill you. If you die, the D clan will no longer have a mission. From now on, everyone will live happily and only live for themselves." Han Yunxi gave a start. "That really isn't a bad idea," she mused. Ning Qing suddenly closed in, his eyes flashing with killing intent. Han Yunxi was so scared that she hurriedly leaned back. "Your Highness, this subordinate will ask you for the last time. Have you thought it through?" He spat out each and every word harshly. Han Yunxi's lips quirked up into a smile as she replied easily, "Once I've thought it over, I'll agree to your terms." Even though she hadn't figured out how to tell Ning Qing about the Feng clan's conspiracy, she had to agree to their request first. If he didn't agree, she wouldn't even have a chance. Han Yunxi smiled beautifully, but Ning Qing didn't smile. Instead, he became even more serious. "Your Highness, a promise cannot be taken back. Please be more serious." Han Yunxi restrained her smile and said seriously, "Don't worry, I will do what I say." Who knew that Ning Qing still wasn't satisfied and said, "Your Highness, please swear." "Okay, I swear that if I, Han Yunxi..." Han Yunxi was still pondering on what to swear when Ning Qing said coldly, "If your Highness breaks today's promise, Long Fei Yi will die a horrible death." In that instant, a trace of coldness flashed across Han Yunxi's eyes. However, she concealed it so well that even though they were really close, Ning Qing didn't detect it. Han Yunxi laughed. Ning Qing, do you think that I'm rejecting you because I like Long Fei Yi? Is there any other reason? Ning Qing asked in return. Although this reason was very chilling, he still faced it directly. He couldn't think of any other reason that would make Han Yunxi so hesitant to take revenge and restore her country. Even if she didn't know about her background in the past, when the blood of the Western Qin royal family flowed in her body, when she found out about everything, how could she not hate? One's home country was one's only home. How could a person not love their own family and their home country? How could she be indifferent to the hatred of her country? Ning Qing didn't know that Han Yunxi came from the future. Her soul had nothing to do with the Western Qin royal family. Therefore he didn't understand. Therefore he could only attribute everything to love. Other than love, how could he vent his hatred? Han Yunxi slowly pushed Ning Qing away. Ning Qing, my choice has nothing to do with Long Fei Yi or who I love. I want to live for myself, so I'm hesitating. Ning Qing felt as if his heart had been bitten by something. It didn't hurt, but there was an indescribable feeling. Han Yunxi asked again, Ning Qing, if you had a choice, would you live for yourself and be yourself instead of being a servant of Western Qin? Ning Qing immediately avoided Han Yunxi's gaze and said, Your Highness, you and I don't have a choice. Please swear immediately. Okay. Han Yunxi raised her hand and said loudly, I, the Princess of Western Qin, swear that if I break today's promise, Long Fei Yi will die a horrible death. She would always be Han Yunxi, and the one who swore was the Princess of Western Qin. Han Yunxi comforted herself. Can you tell me how you escaped from Medical City now? Han Yunxi asked seriously. There's a secret passage in the poison sect's storehouse that leads to the outside of Medical City. Ning Qing replied honestly. How did you know? Han Yunxi was shocked. The head of the 100 Poisons sect sent word. Ning Qing had received a letter from the 100 Poisons sect's head after the Wind Clan's letter. Otherwise, he really wouldn't have been able to escape Medical City. Jun Yixia? Han Yunxi asked suspiciously. From what she knew, Jun Yixia should still be with the Winter Crow clan. No, it's Jun Yixia's junior sister, a girl called Bai Yuqiao. Ning Qing explained seriously, the 100 Poison sect is a branch of the Poison sect. When they learned of the princess's identity, they were willing to serve the Poison sect. They couldn't get in touch with the princess until news of the princess's identity spread. Then they came to this subordinate. Han Yunxi sneered, humbly acknowledging a master isn't the 100 Poison sect's style. Ning Qing looked a little embarrassed. After all, he was the one who had humbly acknowledged a master. Han Yunxi knew he was embarrassed, but she still looked at him coldly. He had never been a kind person. She held grudges, especially when Ning Qing tore her clothes. She couldn't kill him, but she couldn't let him have it easy either. If Ning Qing wanted to confirm whether she had a phoenix birthmark on her back, he could have kidnapped her first and found Ning Jing or a servant girl to take a look. She couldn't figure out why Ning Qing would want her to do this. This guy was just too despicable. Ning Qing was embarrassed, but he didn't lose his temper. He said, This subordinate said before that the Wind Clan controls Northern Li's cavalry. Does your highness remember? Could it be that Jun Yixia is a descendant of the Wind Clan? Han Yunxi asked anxiously. That's right. Ning Qing didn't hide anything from her. Jun Yixia. Han Yunxi muttered to herself, calling him a liar in her heart. If Jun Yixia was a descendant of the Wind Clan, he wouldn't have suffered so much on Fisherman's Island before being rescued by his master. Jun Yixia wasn't a descendant of the Wind Clan but his master. Ning Qing had been tricked. The Wind Clan really didn't have good intentions. The 100 Poison sect might be a branch of the Poison sect, but that was hundreds of years ago. How did Jun Yixia and the others know about the secret passage to the Poison Grounds? Han Yunxi probed. Someone who knew about the secret passage had to be Jun Yixia's master, a direct descendant of the Poison sect. Perhaps it was her father. This subordinate didn't ask too many questions. The 100 Poison sect often enters the Poison sect's forbidden grounds, so it's normal for them to be familiar with the place, Ning Qing explained. Han Yunxi looked at Ning Qing for a long time before asking, Ning Qing, Jun Yixia is still far away at the Winter Crow clan. Was it Bai Yuqiao who wrote the letter to you? That's right. Ning Qing replied honestly. Bai Yuqiao rushed to the battlefield as soon as East Qin's flag was raised at Long Fei Yi. The letter was first delivered to me from the battlefield. She should have reached the battlefield by now. Does Bai Yuqiao have full authority to represent Jun Yixia? Han Yunqi asked. Ning Qing nodded again. Han Yunqi didn't understand. Ning Qing was a cautious man. Why did he trust the Wind Clan so easily? She continued probing. How can you be so sure that Bai Yanqing is the Wind Clan's descendant based on the letter alone? Also, how can you be so sure that the Wind Clan isn't the second Nether clan? Ning Qing ordered a servant to drive the carriage while he and Han Yunqi sat inside. He took out Bai Yanqing's handwritten letter from his sleeve. Han Yunqi read it carefully but didn't find anything special. The letter mentioned the Wind Clan's loyalty to Western Qin's imperial family, the 100 Poisons sect and Northern Li's cavalry. However, there was no proof of Jun Yixia's identity. Your Highness, look at the back. Ning Qing reminded her in a low voice. Han Yunqi flipped the letter over and saw a seal printed on the back with the words West Qin in the center. Around the seal was a circle of lines that looked extremely complicated at first glance. She couldn't make out any patterns, but upon closer inspection, she realized that the lines were actually a coiled dragon. Princess Consort. This is the imperial seal of Western Qin's imperial family. It took the number 1 craftsman 3 years to carve this. This dragon pattern, no one can imitate it. Ning Qing seriously explained. During the war, the imperial family gave the imperial seal to the Wind Clan for safekeeping. In these past years, the D and Nether clans have not only been searching for you, but also for this imperial seal. Han Yunqi never expected such a thing to exist, but that wasn't the point. She lowered her voice and probed again. Ning Qing, how can you be sure that the Wind Clan isn't a second Nether clan? Ning Qing was a smart man and should know that if the Wind Clan was like the Nether clan and had thoughts of betrayal, then the D clan wouldn't be able to resist the Wind Clan. There were 2 reasons for this. First, the Wind Clan was skilled in military formations. Second, the Wind Clan controlled the Northern Li cavalry. Once the D clan and the Long Fei Yi were both injured on the front lines, it wasn't impossible for the Wind Clan's cavalry to arrive and destroy the D clan first. Thus, I ask that your Highness take back the imperial seal when we reach the army camp. Cloud Realm Trade Consortium will control the Northern Li cavalry's provisions. Even if the Wind Clan wants to rebel, they won't have the strength to do so. It wasn't that Ning Qing didn't have his guard up, but he needed the Wind Clan's help right now. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to deal with the East Qin army. Ning Cheng's wariness comforted Han Yunqi more or less. As long as Ning Qing was on guard against the Wind Clan, then she'd have a chance to convince Ning Qing of the Wind Clan's schemes. Han Yunqi didn't have much convincing evidence right now, so she figured she'd better keep her cool until she reached the battlefield and met with Bai Yuqiao. Your Highness, it's getting late. Please rest. We'll reach Tianning's capital in 3 days. This subordinate will arrange for you to meet someone. He has news of the Shadow Clan. Ning Qing prepared to leave as soon as he finished speaking, but Han Yunqi's heart skipped a beat before she pulled him back. What did you say? Chapter 8:20. Han Yunqi's abnormal behavior made Ning Qing very suspicious. He wasn't in a hurry to explain. Instead, he lowered his head and stared at her hand. Her hand was tightly gripping his sleeve. Han Yunqi's heart was about to jump out of her chest. How could she have the leisure to care about Ning Cheng's strange gaze? She anxiously asked, "What did you just say? Who has the whereabouts of the Shadow Clan? Where are they?" Ning Qing still didn't say anything. He just stared at her hand. Han Yunqi immediately let go. "Hurry up and say it." She was the princess, her master. After she made the oath, he regained his respect. But at this moment he seemed to have forgotten his identity. He allowed her to be anxious and leisurely sat back down. "Princess, why are you so nervous about the whereabouts of the Shadow Clan? What, have you found your conscience?" Previously, when Ning Jing had cried and told this woman about the Shadow Clan's sacrifice, this woman hadn't had this kind of attitude. Han Yunqi finally realized that she had lost her composure and misunderstood. She had almost forgotten that although Tang Li knew Gu Beiyue's identity and knew that Gu Beiyue had fallen off the cliff, Ning Jing didn't know, and Ning Qing definitely didn't know. Ning Qing had just said that he had information about the Shadow Clan. It wasn't about Gu Beiyue's whereabouts, but about who the Shadow Clan's descendants were. Aside from the Long Fei Ye's people, who else knew about Gu Beiyue's past? Han Yunqi quickly thought of Chu Tianin. Could it be that the Nether Clan's Chu family was going to switch sides to the Long Fei Yi so soon? Han Yunxi exhaled and pretended to be unhappy. I've mocked enough. Shouldn't you tell me what's going on? Who knows the whereabouts of the Shadow Clan? Where are the Shadow Clan's descendants? Your Highness, the Di and Ying clans are of the same mind. You can't be biased. Ning Qing said jokingly. Although Han Yunxi was anxious to know the answer, she didn't buy Ning Cheng's argument. She went straight to the point and coldly snorted, Ning Cheng, the Shadow Clan won't offend you like this. This. She almost called herself Princess Consort again, but she immediately changed her words. I'll get it back one day. If she continued to call herself princess, then perhaps Ning Qing would no longer believe anything she said. However, she really couldn't accept the word princess, so she could only use I. Ning Qing was left speechless. Without Han Yunxi asking, he explained himself. Someone once used the whereabouts of the Shadow Clan to exchange for your Highness' life. If your Highness wants to know the whereabouts of the Shadow Clan, you should personally go and meet them. Chuchinga? Han Yunxi finally remembered this woman, but she didn't ask any more questions. She knew that Ning Qing wasn't taking her to Tianning's capital city to find out the whereabouts of the Shadow Clan. He was probably planning to start a coup in the capital city and hang out Western Qin's military banners. When that happened, the Long Fei Yi would know her whereabouts. What would he think of her then? How was she supposed to ask that question? How was she supposed to get an answer from the Long Fei Yi? Han Yunxi was melancholy. She didn't have time, nor did she have a path to take. She could only take it one step at a time. Actually, not long ago, Ning Qing had received news that the Long Fei Yi refused to acknowledge Han Yunxi's status as Western Qin's princess. Moreover, he'd issued a high-profile order to investigate the source of the rumors. At the same time, Bai Yanqing had received the news as well. His thoughts were the same as Ning Cheng's. Lass, this is the calamity of beauties, understand? Bai Yanqing grinned. Bai Yuqiao shook his head. Master, the Duke of Qin is only doing this to placate the soldiers' morale. How could he have feelings for a Western Qin princess? How about we make a bet? Bai Yanqing was in a very good mood. Right. Bai Yuqiao agreed. I'll bet that the Duke of Qin has no feelings for Han Yunxi. Just wait. The lust bite energy will prove your master right. Bai Yanqing said. Master, what's the lust bite energy? Bai Yuqiao didn't understand. This was the first time Bai Yanqing had mentioned the lust bite energy to Bai Yuqiao. He explained it very clearly, leaving Bai Yuqiao stunned. Only now did he realize how scheming his master was and how much he'd hidden from his senior brother. Master, your disciple still doesn't understand. How can old enemies fall in love with each other? If it were you, Master, would you fall in love with your enemy? Bai Yuqiao asked seriously. Bai Yanqing's originally spirited eyes suddenly dimmed. He didn't answer Bai Yuqiao's question for a long time. Bai Yuqiao was afraid of making him unhappy, so he quickly changed the topic. Master, if we lie to Ning Qing like this, will he believe us? Ning Qing isn't someone who's easy to deal with. He will, at least for the next few months. Bai Yanqing was very sure. He'd already told Bai Yuqiao that when they met Ning Qing and Han Yunxi, he'd pretend to be Jun Yixie's servant. Jun Yixie would teach him the Wind Clan's army formation techniques. Jun Yixie would cooperate with Ning Qing as a member of the Wind Clan. His identity as a member of the Black Clan wouldn't be revealed for the time being. Master, why do you have to hide senior brother's identity? Bai Yuqiao probed. According to her understanding, although the Black Clan was loyal to the East Qin Imperial Clan, after the West Qin Imperial Clan was annihilated, the Black Clan betrayed the East Qin Imperial Clan and joined forces with the Di Clan and Feng Clan to destroy the East Qin Imperial Clan. This is for your senior brother's own good. You don't understand, but he will. Bai Yanqing's tone was clearly unfriendly. Bai Yuqiao didn't dare to ask anymore. You still haven't found the whereabouts of the perplexing butterfly illusion? Bai Yanqing asked again. That group of trash is really useless. This disciple has already ordered people to secretly bring Su Xiaoyu here. This disciple will personally interrogate her. Master, don't worry. Bai Yuqiao honestly reported. Be careful, don't let the cat out of the bag. Bai Yanqing solemnly reminded. Bai Yanqing thought that his plan was flawless, but he didn't know that Han Yunxi had already seen through him. He also didn't know that Long Fei Yi had already suspected him. Your Highness, if Gu Beiyue, is going to die. How are we going to explain this to the Princess Consort? Su Donglin timidly asked. After they couldn't find him in the apricot forest, he had already accompanied His Highness to guard the city gates for a day and a night. His Highness hadn't said a word, so he felt that he needed to find a topic to talk to His Highness. Drag that old fox out and she'll believe you, Long Fei Yi actually spoke up. Back on Celestial Mountain, He Ilian's swordsmanship had far surpassed everyone's expectations. It was obvious that he had an expert guiding him from behind. Who else could that expert be but the old fox? Even if it wasn't the old fox who tried to assassinate Gu Beiyue, he still had to be involved. After all, it was He Ilian who had been responsible for Tsong Chiozi's collusion with the heretical sword sect. In other words, the old fox controlled the heretical sword sect. Your Highness, the old fox. Before Su Donglin could finish, a powerful force came crashing towards him. Fortunately, Long Fei Yi pushed Su Donglin aside, or else he would have tumbled off the city gates. Long Fei grabbed a seed out of thin air. This was the source of the powerful force he'd felt just then. It was the seed of a thorny vine. Long Fei Yi, this old man and you can't exist under the same sky. At some point, Gu had appeared on the other side of the city gates. His luxurious red robes billowed in the wind as he pointed his sword at Long Fei Yi. His beautiful face was filled with rage. As soon as he emerged from the abyss, Luo Zuishan had told him everything that had happened over the past few days. Han Yunxi was actually a descendant of Western Qin's imperial clan. And she'd gone missing. Luo Zuishan hadn't even finished speaking before Gu Beiyue rushed over to attack Long Fei Yi. No matter how stupid Gu was, he'd still remember Mute Granny. Long Fei Yi, you killed Mute Granny to hide Han Yunxi's identity. You're despicable. Gu cursed. I didn't kill her. Long Fei Yi said. The people you kidnapped died in your territory. Fei didn't die because of you. How did they die? Long Fei Yi, do you take this old man for a fool? Gu was furious. He could tolerate Long Fei Yi lying to Han Yunxi, but he couldn't tolerate Long Fei Yi using Han Yunxi like this. Long Fei Yi had long known that Han Yunxi was a Western Qin princess. Therefore all his love for Han Yunxi was to use her. If someone hadn't exposed the truth, Long Fei Yi would have used Han Yunxi to suppress Western Qin's power. Gu's words silenced Long Fei Yi. Although he hadn't killed Mute Granny with his own hands, she died because of him. Mute Granny was a smart person and understood what he meant. Han Yunxi's secret could only be kept secret with Mute Granny's grave. Did you kill Gu Beiyue? Gu's entire being seemed to be burning with rage. He was burning with agony. He liked Poison Lass so much, but he'd never really fought with Long Fei Yi over her. That was because he knew how much Poison Lass liked Long Fei Yi. Where was Poison Lass now? Would that stubborn, carefree girl cry? How sad would she be? If I said no, would you believe me? Long Fei Yi asked. I don't. Gu Qishao replied without hesitation. Long Fei Yi had never been one to explain himself, much less explain himself. He tossed aside the seeds in his hands and said coldly, I just received news that Han Yunxi was taken to Tianning's capital city by Ning Cheng. At that, Gu Qishao sheathed his sword and turned to leave. He was so anxious that even his anger had been replaced by anxiety. Master, you lied to him? Su Donglin muttered to himself. Long Fei Ye's eyes were hooded as he sat on the city gates. It had already been a day and night. All of Medical City's 4 gates and secret passages were tightly guarded, while 3 groups of men were searching the city. Although there was no evidence to prove that Ning Cheng had escaped, he still had to be wary. Still, he had to be on guard against Ning Cheng's escape. If he did, he'd definitely take Han Yunxi to Tianning's capital city first. Last night, he'd sent a request to Tianshan Kenzo for help and a few experts from the Abstinence Courtyard to guard the capital city. But none of them were as reassuring as Gu. Besides him and Gu Beiyue, who else in this world would search like a madman for Han Yunxi? If they couldn't find Ning Cheng by then, he would leave the city to the guards and personally rush to the capital city. Su Donglin saw His Highness's expression and didn't dare to continue the topic. He murmured to the servant by his side, Go check on the Tang clan head situation. Tang Li had said yesterday that if Ning Jing didn't confess, he'd hang her up at the city gates. He didn't know if the interrogation had yielded any results. Ning Jing was locked up in the room where Han Yunxi had disappeared. All of the servants had been called away by Tang Li, leaving only the 2 of them in the room. A day as husband and wife meant endless devotion for the rest of their lives. Tang Li was a gentleman and didn't torture her, but... Chapter 8:21. Although Tang Li hadn't tortured her, his actions were even more frightening. At the very least, in Ning Jing's eyes, this move of his was extremely frightening. Tang Li was tickling her. After being married to Ning Jing for so long, Tang Li didn't even know how many times he'd eaten Ning Jing clean. He knew this woman's weak spot all too well. Ning Jing was very ticklish at that. As a matter of fact, Tang Li hadn't even made a move. All he did was raise his hands in warning, but she was already backing away step by step with an ashen face. Ning Jing had a metal chain wrapped around her waist, the other end of which hung from the ceiling. Her hands were tied behind her back and only her feet could move. Moreover, there was a limit to how much she could move. She backed away step by step, wanting to hide, but she couldn't because of the chains. Seeing that she couldn't retreat any further, Tang Li chuckled. Jing, have you thought it through? Are you going to speak or not? Of course, Ning Jing knew where Ning Qing had escaped from, as well as the route Ning Qing had taken to escape to Tianning's imperial city. However, when she'd purposely set a trap to lure Tang Li to the apricot woods, she'd steeled her heart. No matter what punishment she had to endure, she wouldn't betray Ning Qing. Although she'd once wanted to live for herself, she knew that she wouldn't and couldn't betray Ning Qing. Once she did, it would mean that she'd let down the countless D clan members who'd sacrificed themselves for the sake of Western Qin's revival. At a time like this, loyalty to Western Qin was no longer important. At the very least, she'd never betray her own clan. Cold Ning Jing stared at Tang Li. Just like in the past, whenever the two of them messed around, he'd always be all smiles, but she'd never treat him kindly. Usually when he liked to joke around, she would always pour cold water on him. Especially when it came to tickling, she was absolutely serious. Tang Li could only tickle her a few times before he stopped. She didn't know if he was intimidated by her sternness or if he was deliberately sparing her. The room was silent. He was smiling while she was frowning. In a trance, it was as if they were still in the small courtyard of the Tang sect filled with daisies and nothing had happened in Medical City. He didn't know if they had coincidentally thought of the past, but he didn't make a move. Ning Jing also didn't say a word. However, no matter how beautiful the past was, it was all an illusion. He was acting and she was pretending. Both of them were well aware of it. If it weren't for everything that had happened in Medical City, would there have been a clear winner between them? Would there have been a side that had taken it seriously and given their hearts to each other first? Unfortunately, there was no more chance to determine the victor. The one-year deadline was not up yet, but the play could not continue. In the end, Ning Jing spoke up first. Cold and expressionless, she said, "It's no use even if you kill me. I don't know a thing." Tang Li's smile froze before he slowly withdrew it. His entire being grew very quiet as he walked step by step towards Ning Jing. Ning Jing stared fixedly at him. At this moment, Tang Li was her most infatuated self. His white robes were otherworldly, his aura refined and pure, like an indifferent immortal. Ning Jing couldn't help but recall the scene when Tang Li had gone to Cloud Realm Trade Consortium to ask for her hand in marriage. He'd stood at the door and looked back, his tender voice saying, "Jing, wait for me to marry you." Yes. His figure and his tenderness were fixed in the inky scenery of the distant mountains, and forever in her heart. Finally, Tang Li's hand broke Ning Jing's train of thought. She allowed him to tickle her waist a few times but remained indifferent. She endured it. But Tang Li understood her too well. His hands quickly crept up to her armpits. Ning Jing resisted the itch, but when he touched her armpits, she couldn't help but shift her body away. "Are you begging for mercy?" Tang Li asked cold. "When have I ever begged you for mercy?" Ning Jing retorted. "That's right. No matter what happened in the past, Tang Li would always be the one begging for mercy in the end. Even if it was Ning Jing's fault, Tang Li would still lower his head and beg for mercy like a grandson. Tang Li said expressionlessly, "From today onwards, even if you beg for mercy, I won't let you go. Tell me where Ning Qing is and I'll make you feel better. But if you don't regret it." Ning Jing laughed. "Tang Li, when have I ever regretted my actions towards you?" Tang Li's heart suddenly tightened. He didn't know why, but it hurt. But he quickly ignored it. He didn't hesitate to scratch Ning Jing's armpits. Ning Jing didn't dodge and started to laugh. The more she laughed, the louder she laughed. In the end, she laughed until her eyes were wet. Tang Li's face remained solemn and cold. The two of them were like this, acting out of character. He was serious, she was laughing, and they continued fooling around. In the past, it was harder for him to make a beauty smile than to pluck the stars and fish for the moon. The attendants outside heard the commotion in the room and were puzzled. What was the Tang clan master doing? Was he still trying to make Ning Jing happy at this juncture? Yes, Ning Jing's laughter sounded so happy. Ever since she married into the Tang clan, she had never indulged herself and laughed so loudly. When Su Donglin arrived, he also heard the commotion in the room. He was so angry that he immediately ran to report it to His Highness Duke of Qin. But who knew that His Highness Duke of Qin would still say, she's his legal wife, so he can deal with her himself. Su Donglin suddenly understood. He thought if it was esteemed Wang Fei today, His Highness might not be able to punish her by hand, right? Women are so scary. At the medical academy, Ning Jing finally couldn't take it anymore. She didn't compromise, nor did she beg for mercy. She laughed until she almost couldn't breathe. Ali, I'm pregnant. She didn't realize that she had just called him Ali, and he didn't pay attention to it either. After calling him that for so long, how could he not get used to it? Those last few words caused Tang Li's hands to stop abruptly. She said that she was pregnant. Tang Li was stunned, his eyes wide and mouth agape. Meanwhile, Ning Jing was still laughing, but it wasn't as wanton as before. She smiled slightly, and her smile was so beautiful and blissful. She said, Tang Li, you're going to be a father. She said, Tang Li, if you tickle me again, I won't be able to keep our child if it affects the baby. It was clearly a threat. Was it real or fake? Tang Li suddenly retreated, putting some distance between himself and Ning Jing to calm himself down. He avoided Ning Jing's provocative gaze. Someone get a doctor here. Tang Li shouted. Ning Jing suddenly laughed out loud. Tang Li, so you actually care about this? She was laughing at him, laughing at his soft-heartedness, laughing at his loss. As soon as she said this, Tang Li instantly calmed down. He said coldly, you're thinking too much. I'm just looking for a doctor to deal with it. You're not qualified to be pregnant with my Tang clan's child. Fortunately, I've never gotten pregnant. Ning Jing sneered, her expression indifferent. The doctor was just at the door. He knocked on the door, but before he could speak, Ning Jing said, forget it, I'm just lying to you. Tang Li's gaze froze, but it was only for a moment. When he heard the doctor's voice, he was unusually angry. Get lost. Ning Jing secretly heaved a sigh of relief, but Tang Li missed it. He said coldly, I'll give you one last night to think about it. If you don't say it tomorrow, you can prepare to die at the city gates. After he finished speaking, he strode off. Ning Jing lowered her eyes and lowered her head, her entire being growing quiet. She was like a wilted flower whose branches drooped down, never to bloom again. Tang Li went to Long Fei Ye's side and sat down without a word. Long Fei Ye glanced at him without asking anything. If we can't find him tomorrow, help me keep watch. I'll make a trip to Tianning's imperial city. You'll be in charge of everything here. Don't forget about Gu Beiyue. Long Fei Yi hesitated for a long time before he said in a low voice, if he's dead, I want to see his corpse. Tang Li didn't reply for a long time, as if he'd lost all his soul. Long Fei Yi had to remind him again before he nodded. Understood, don't worry. After a night of searching without finding anyone, Long Fei Yi set off for Tianning's imperial city. Bailey Mingxiang and the rest arrived at Medical City late, so they missed Long Fei Yi. Uncle Gao, I think we should go back first. His Highness will return to the army sooner or later, Bailey Mingxiang said. Miss Mingxiang, why don't you find a carriage and follow behind this old man? It's been too tiring for a girl like you to travel all the way. Uncle Gao's heart ached for Bailey Mingxiang. Whether or not His Highness Duke of Qin was here, Bailey Mingxiang could only sit outside the carriage. His Highness was obsessed with cleanliness, so esteemed Wang Fei was the only one who'd ever sat in this carriage. Uncle Gao didn't dare to let Bailey Mingxiang sit in it, and Bailey Mingxiang didn't dare to break the rules either. No need, I'm used to it, Bailey Mingxiang lowered her voice and teased. Ever since I started practicing martial arts, my body hasn't been as delicate as before. But, alright Uncle Gao, let's hurry back. Bailey Mingxiang knew her father's temper well. She didn't know if she could help, but she had to hurry back as soon as possible. The two of them bid farewell to Tang Li and went back the same way they'd come. When they reached a place where no one was around, Uncle Gao avoided the shadow guard and asked in a low voice, "Miss Mingxiang, you've served esteemed Wang Fei before. Tell me honestly, does esteemed Wang Fei really have a phoenix birthmark on her back?" "No." Bailey Mingxiang didn't hesitate and blurted out, "Uncle Gao, His Highness is already investigating the person who started the rumor. How can you still be suspicious? Besides, who can prove that someone with a phoenix birthmark is a descendant of the Western Qin imperial family?" Uncle Gao nodded thoughtfully. Bailey Mingxiang was afraid that he wouldn't believe her, so she said, "The person who started the rumor must be trying to sow discord. Uncle Gao, you're familiar with the Tang sect. The people of the Tang sect hate esteemed Wang Fei the most. This time you have to side with esteemed Wang Fei." Uncle Gao nodded. "Of course." Bailey Mingxiang finally let out a sigh of relief. She'd seen the phoenix birthmark before, so she knew what the truth was. His Highness wanted to protect esteemed Wang Fei. As a descendant of the Mermaid clan, how could she not hate the Western Qin imperial family and the Western Qin faction? But Han Yunqi wasn't just a descendant of Western Qin, but her savior as well. She'd leave her hatred to those who wanted to fight for the world. She only knew that the extra time she'd lived was all thanks to that woman's constant protection and encouragement. She'd never forget that woman's words, "I'll definitely be by your side on the day the beauty's blood is completed." Perhaps some people would say that Han Yunqi wouldn't have saved her if she knew her true identity. But Bailey Mingxiang didn't like to assume things that others had already done. After all, even if Han Yunqi wasn't a Western Qin princess, she still had no obligation to save her. Kindness always led to good karma. Unfortunately, far away in Tianning, Han Yunqi had no idea that Bailey Mingxiang was still so grateful to her. Currently, Han Yunqi was staring at Chu Qingge. Chapter 822. Actually, Han Yunqi had long guessed that Chu Qingge was the one who wanted her life in exchange for the whereabouts of the Shadow Clan. The youngest Empress Dowager in Tianning's history was the D clan's Chu clan member who hated her the most. Chu Qingge treated her hatred for Han Yunqi as the most important thing in her life. If she knew that Han Yunqi didn't care about her at all, would she fall apart? Actually, she was falling apart right now because she'd finally found out the truth. She couldn't compare to Han Yunqi in any way except for her birth status, which was better than Han Yunqi's. Her bloodline was nobler than Han Yunqi's. But who knew that Han Yunqi actually had a bloodline she could never surpass, ignore or look down upon? The bloodline of Western Qin's imperial clan. Han Yunqi wasn't the Han clan's daughter of the first wife, but the world's noblest princess, Western Qin's princess. Leaving aside her grudges against the founding of the country, she had to admit that only Han Yunqi was worthy of Long Fei, the East Qin crown prince, in terms of bloodline and status. Chu Qingge felt like she'd been utterly defeated. She'd always used her birth status to comfort herself and lie to herself, but now she didn't even have the right to lie to herself. A descendant of the Nether clan was a servant of Western Qin's imperial clan. In other words, she was Han Yunqi's servant. The woman she'd always hated and looked down upon was actually her own master. What could be more ironic than this? Han Yunqi sat lazily in her seat as she studied Chu Qingge. Chu Qingge stood before her, gaping. Her 3 souls and 7 spirits were all in pain, so much so that she wanted to burst into tears. But who could tell her why this was happening? This was simply a nightmare. Neither Han Yunqi nor Chu Qingge spoke. Compared to Long Fei Ye's junior sister, Duanmu Yao, Han Yunqi didn't have much of an opinion about Chu Qingge. "I've brought them here. Can you tell me the whereabouts of the Shadow Clan now?" Ning Qing said coldly. Chu Qingge hadn't seen Ning Qing in ages. She even missed Ning Cheng's icy voice. His voice could give her illusions and comfort her heart that was about to go mad with longing. She looked at Ning Qing for a very long time before she suddenly laughed out loud. Kill her and I'll tell you. There's only one person left from the Shadow Clan. I know who he is. I've even seen him before. I saw it with my own eyes. You're seeking death." Ning Cheng's killing intent flared as he grabbed Chu Qingge by the throat. "Don't be so shameless." Chu Qingge was still laughing. She cast a sidelong glance at Han Yunqi, then stared at Han Yunqi for a long time. Finally, she chuckled and asked, "Han Yunqi, do you think you'll be proud of your status?" Han Yunqi gestured for Ning Qing to let go. She had long known of the Shadow Clan's whereabouts, but she hadn't come to see Chuchinga to humiliate her. She only wanted to get some information out of Chuchinga's mouth. After all she knew was that Gu Beiyue was a member of the Shadow Clan. As for what Gu Beiyue had done in the past, she wanted to know. Perhaps Chuchinga would know something she didn't. Faced with Ning Qing, Han Yunxi could only speak against her conscience for now. Otherwise she might end up as Ning Cheng's puppet and lose her right to speak. If she allowed Ning Qing to sense her acknowledgement of her status, then Ning Cheng's loyalty would at least make him treat her with courtesy and respect. She replied, "Of course. My Western Qin imperial bloodline is the noblest." But Chuchinga actually spat at her. Fortunately, Han Yunxi dodged in time, giving her quite a fright. Her impression of Chuchinga was that she was a cold beauty with a good upbringing. Now she was no different from a madwoman. Impudence. Ning Qing angrily grabbed Chuchinga and pulled her aside, away from Han Yunxi. Chuchinga lost her footing and fell to the ground. She sat there paralyzed before laughing like a madwoman. "Han Yunxi, I'm telling you, I hate my birth. I'd rather be the daughter of a commoner. Do you know why?" At the sight of Chuchinga's mental breakdown, Han Yunxi suddenly felt a twinge of heartache for the woman. Although Chuchinga had fallen into her trap and won Emperor Tianhui's favor for the marriage alliance, it was still because she was a descendant of the Nether clan. Hadn't Chuchinga been forced to marry Emperor Tianhui by her father and older brothers? Otherwise, the Chu clan would have found a way to resolve Chuchinga's predicament with their past power in Western Zhou. Han Yunxi suddenly recalled Ning Jing's tear-streaked face. "Han Yunxi, do you know that my big sister Ning Jing abandoned her childhood sweetheart and married into the palace at the age of 15? She allowed that old Emperor Tianhui to defile her." Both the Eastern and Western Qin factions had their fair share of grievances. Both of them had the right to resent and hate. But when would such retribution ever end? How many of these innocent women were going to be sacrificed and suffer uncontrollably? Han Yunxi dearly wished that the enmity between the Eastern and Western Qin factions could be resolved, but she knew it was impossible. It wasn't just hatred but the hegemony of Cloud Realm continent as well. Even people with no old grudges would fight until their heads bled, to say nothing of the Eastern and Western Qin factions. Who would be willing to give up the world on a silver platter? If you were the daughter of a commoner, then you wouldn't have needed to marry Tianhui. Han Yunxi finally said something serious to Chuchinga. It was her heartfelt words. But Chuchinga only laughed maniacally. "Han Yunxi, I knew it. I knew you wouldn't understand. How could someone like you understand?" Had she guessed wrong? Han Yunxi really didn't understand. Then why? "Because I love him. I love him very, very much. I didn't want to be his enemy the moment I was born." Chuchinga practically roared the words. "Han Yunxi, I'm telling you, I love Long Fei. Even if I'm a descendant of the Nether clan, I still don't hate Long Fei. Because I love him. Han Yunxi, I love him even more than you, ha." Chuchinga had really lost her mind. She couldn't stop laughing. She'd finally found a place where she could beat Han Yunxi. She loved Long Fei more than Han Yunxi did. Han Yunxi was proud of her identity as the princess of Western Qin. She was proud of her status as Long Fei's enemy. She must hate Long Fei to the core after finding out about her past, right? "Pa, Han Yunxi, you've lost. You've lost. You don't even have the right to love him, ha." Chuchinga was still laughing but her face was now covered in tears. "Han Yunxi, I dare to love him. I dare to say it out loud. Do you dare? You won't, ha." Han Yunxi's heart was no longer filled with pity. She stared expressionlessly at Chuchinga without a word. Ning Qing grew angrier the more he heard. He suddenly raised his sword and interrupted Chuchinga's madness. "Enough. Who's the descendant of the Shadow Clan? If you won't tell me, I'll kill you." Han Yunxi wanted to stop him but it was too late. Ning Qing hadn't moved his sword, but Chuchinga herself had thrown herself at Ning Cheng's sword. Ning Qing gave a start. He was very surprised. "Why aren't you letting go yet?" Han Yunxi immediately rushed over and scolded Ning Qing. Only then did Ning Qing release his sword. Han Yunxi held Chuchinga in her arms and didn't dare to draw her sword. She ordered anxiously, "Find a doctor and bring a large amount of medicine to stop the bleeding. Hurry." Ning Qing hadn't asked if he'd really killed Chuchinga after finding out who the descendant of the Shadow Clan was. He never expected her to be so unafraid of death. He quickly went to call for help. Han Yunxi held Chu Qingge in her arms and warned her cold voice. Chu Qingge, I'm telling you now. If you like Long Fei Yi, you'd better live on and tell him yourself. Duan Mu Yao even told him herself, but what about you? It's no use telling me so much. Go find him yourself. Han Yunxi suddenly thought of a saying, in true love, there are no love rivals. Chu Qingge's love was completely different from Duan Mu Yao's. I'm already dirty. I don't have the right to tell him. Chu Qingge suddenly coughed up multiple mouthfuls of blood. She clutched Han Yunxi's hand and used the last of her life to beg Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi, do you dare? Do you dare to keep loving him? I beg you, Han Yunxi. I beg you to keep loving him and kill Ningqing, alright? Han Yunxi, you can't lose to me. Chu Qingge couldn't hold on any longer. She stared fixedly at Han Yunxi as she died in Han Yunxi's arms. Han Yunxi never thought that Chu Qingge would die in her arms like this. Chu Qingge probably never thought she'd end up like this either. Han Yunxi's heart felt like it had been bitten by something. It was extremely painful. Why was love so hard? She murmured, Chu Qingge, do you know that I just wanted to ask Long Fei Yi a question? I wanted to ask him if I wasn't the princess of Western Qin, would he still like me? If he did, I'd definitely be braver than you. As Han Yunxi spoke, she gently closed Chu Qingge's eyes so she could rest in peace. Ningqing was standing by the door. He only knew that Han Yunxi and Chu Qingge were speaking in low voices, but had no idea what they were talking about. When the doctor arrived, Han Yunxi said, no need. She's free now. What did she say to you? Was it about the whereabouts of the Shadow Clan? Ningqing rushed over and almost bumped into Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi gave him a deep look before Ningqing backed away. This subordinate has offended you. Princess, please forgive me. I'll remember all of your crimes. Han Yunxi said unhappily. Princess, what did she say? Ningqing was impatient. Over the past few years, the Shadow Clan had been the most urgent to find out the whereabouts of the Imperial Clan. She said that after the Shadow Clan comes Gu Beiyue. Han Yunxi hid the truth about the dark-robed assassin and pretended to sigh with emotion. I didn't expect this at all. Ningqing was so surprised that he slapped himself. He'd imprisoned Gu Beiyue in the past. Ningqing had no idea that Gu Beiyue and Long Fei Yi were working together, much less that Chu Tianyin had returned to Western Zhou to start the war under the orders of Gu Beiyue and Long Fei Yi. He'd always treated Gu Beiyue as a mere doctor. I just remembered something. Han Yunxi pretended to be surprised. That year in the heaven pit, a white-robed gentleman who knew the shadow technique kidnapped me. Could he be Gu Beiyue? At that time Jun Yixia was also there. Jun Yixia. Ningqing looked pensive. He was there. Moreover, Han Yunxi became angry and told him about how Jun Yixia had done something to her and how the white-robed gentleman had saved her. The complex look in Ningqing's eyes became even more intense. Seeing this, Han Yunxi finally knew how to convince Ningqing. Chapter 823. After Han Yunxi told Ningqing about Jun Yixia's improper behavior towards her, Ningqing sat there by himself for a long time without saying a word. Stop when appropriate was a very profound skill. If used well, it would yield twice the results with half the effort. If not, it would all crumble. Han Yunxi stopped there and let Ningqing remain silent. She didn't take the initiative to say anything else. Of course, if Ningqing asked her questions, she'd answer them without question. In the end, Ningqing said seriously, Jun Yixia didn't tell me such a big thing. Why? Han Yunxi smiled coldly. He offended me, but he didn't dare to admit it. At least now that he knows you're looking for the Shadow Clan's whereabouts, shouldn't he tell me? I thought Gu Beiyue was protecting me because of the poison beast, but it's laughable now that I think about it. Why would a descendant of the Shadow Clan need a poison beast? He's not like Jun Yixia's poison skills, nor can he fight the poison beast. Ningqing nodded, then suddenly asked, Is there anything else? Han Yunxi almost didn't know how to react. What? Princess is suspecting Jun Yixia, isn't she? Besides that, is there anything else that's aroused Princess's suspicions? Ningqing asked seriously. Han Yunxi was surprised. Only now did she realize that Ningqing was much smarter than she'd imagined. But it made sense. Ningqing was the boss behind Cloud Realm Trade Consortium, the master of the Ning clan troops and Tianning's prince regent. He could do business, lead troops and scheme in politics. He was simply a genius who crossed over from another world. If he wasn't smart, how could he be where he was today? She recalled how he'd tricked the Nether clan's Chu clan and even tricked Long Fei Yi to seize control of Tianning. Long Fei Yi was a very vengeful man back then. Han Yunxi thought that it must be Ning Cheng's docile and respectful attitude that made her forget that he was actually a fierce wolf. Han Yunxi originally wanted to hide the matter of the black-clothed assassin and let Ning Qing investigate it himself. At this moment she changed her mind. When faced with such a smart person, rather than beating around the bush, it was better to be straightforward with him. What's more, his current attitude was very frank. If Han Yunxi continued to hide it, it would seem that she had ulterior motives. She said, "Ning Qing, I'm not suspecting him, but I'm sure he's up to no good." Jun Yixia didn't say anything because he didn't want you to find the Shadow Clan. You all know that the Shadow Clan was almost completely wiped out back then. Moreover, the Shadow Clan is just a shadow guard. They aren't a powerful force. They don't have any military or financial support for the recovery of Western Qin. What is Jun Yixia afraid of about Gu Beiyue? Seeing that Ning Qing was seriously pondering, Han Yunxi continued, "Ning Qing, the Shadow Clan's existence is only related to my personal safety. He doesn't want you to find the Shadow Clan, so he definitely doesn't want me, Han Yunxi, to live well." "He dares," Ning Qing said coldly. Han Yunxi went along with his intentions and said, "Of course there's another possibility, which is that Jun Yixia has something on Gu Beiyue, but he doesn't dare to say it." Although Ning Qing nodded, he didn't completely believe Han Yunxi's words. After all, Han Yunxi didn't give him a clear conclusion, but provided two doubts. As for the truth, he still had to find Gu Beiyue to know. Between the Shadow Clan and the Wind Clan, Ning Qing had absolute trust in the Shadow Clan. "Princess, where in Medical City is Gu Beiyue in seclusion?" Ning Qing asked seriously. Han Yunxi smiled bitterly and stared at him silently. "Princess." Ning Qing was a little uneasy. On the night that Long Fei Yi raised his troops, Gu Beiyue was attacked by an assassin and fell into the deepest abyss of the poison sect's forbidden grounds. They went down to search for him for a long time, but couldn't find him, Han Yunxi said mildly. Ning Qing froze. Han Yunxi told Ning Qing everything that happened that night, but she didn't mention that the dark-robed assassin had used Celestial Mountain sword skills. She couldn't say this even if she was beaten to death. Otherwise, Ning Qing would not only doubt her words, but also her stance. Ning Cheng's attitude towards Long Fei Yi was absolute enmity. He trusted anyone but Long Fei Yi. "So you suspect that the assassin is from the poison sect?" Ning Qing asked. "It must be someone from the poison sect and a direct descendant at that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to cure my poison so quickly," Han Yunxi said confidently. Ning Cheng's brows furrowed even tighter. Han Yunxi accidentally caught sight of Long Fei Ye's furrowed brows and hurriedly averted her eyes. She secretly laughed at her poor eyesight, but she knew it was only because she missed that man too much. "A direct descendant of the poison sect, the princesses." Ning Qing was incredulous. "Even if he isn't my father, he must be an elder. Why doesn't he recognize me? Why did he kill Gu Beiyue? He's ungrateful. The poison sect was rehabilitated all thanks to Gu Beiyue," Han Yunxi said indignantly. "Why must he be an elder?" Ning Qing countered. "It's possible that he's from the same generation. Because he's very likely Jun Yixia's master." Han Yunxi got straight to the point. "I'm sure Ning Nuo is well aware of Jun Yixia's imprisonment on Fishery Island." Han Yunxi told him everything about Fishery Island's poison fog and the Lost Path poison duel. She pointed the spearhead at the Wind Clan. Flap. Ning Qing shot to his feet, fury dancing in his eyes. If he still couldn't figure out what was going on after knowing so much, he might as well quit his job. Jun Yixia wasn't a member of the Wind Clan, he was just a spokesperson. Han Yunxi saw that things were going well and hurriedly reminded him. "Ning Qing, back then the Nether clan's Chu clan raised the banner of reviving Western Qin. Your D clan knew that the Nether clan had ulterior motives, but did the Wind clan know as well? Why didn't they show their faces? Why did they wait until Long Fei Yi mobilized his troops? Also, my identity was exposed the moment Long Fei Yi mobilized his troops. Who was the one who did that?" Han Yunxi asked. "Jun Yixia's master is your father, so he knows about your origins. Ning Qing immediately denied it. He knows about Lady Tianqin's origins, so he knows about your identity. He knew you were Western Qin's princess from the moment you were born. Han Yunxi had never felt so good about Ning Qing before. She nodded excitedly. Not only did he hide it for so many years, he only revealed it to the public today. He doesn't even acknowledge you. Such motives. Ning Cheng's beautiful eyes narrowed into slits, filled with a dangerous aura and even a hint of viciousness. Once again it reminded Han Yunxi that the man in front of her wasn't a docile sheep, but a wild wolf that could bite a person to death. For the first time Han Yunxi rejoiced in Ning Cheng's loyalty to Western Qin and his trust in her. Otherwise, heaven knows how much time and effort she'd have to spend to expose the Wind Clan's lies. It didn't matter how much effort she put into it, but she didn't have much time left. She looked at Chu Chinga's sickly, emaciated body on the ground and felt grateful that this woman had found a way to convince Ning Qing. Ning Qing paced back and forth in the room before coming to a decision. Princess, Tianning has long fallen under this subordinate's control. This subordinate plans to hang up the Western Chu banner tomorrow. We won't go to the army but stay in the palace and have Bai Yuqiao pay his respects. No matter what, he couldn't let Bai Yuqiao stay in the army any longer. Heaven knows what kind of intentions she had. Let's get the Imperial Jade Seal first before we hang up the banner, Han Yunxi intoned. As long as you're here, Princess, it won't affect us much, Ning Qing said. Ning Qing had no idea that Han Yunxi's actions would have a massive impact. Once the banner was hung, she'd officially be the princess of Western Qin and lead the Di and Wind clans against the Long Fei Yi. What would Long Fei Yi think of her then? Han Yunxi remembered clearly that Long Fei Yi had once asked her if she'd bear a grudge against East Qin if she was the princess of Western Qin, or if she'd want to restore her country. Her answer back then had always been yes. Once the two sides officially clashed, would she still have a chance to ask that question? No matter what, Han Yunxi had to stop Ning Qing from hanging up the banner. It was impossible to see Long Fei Yi now, so she had to find a reliable person to pass on the problem to Long Fei Yi. Han Yunxi began to think nervously. Just what kind of reason should she use to convince Ning Qing? Finally, she came up with a brilliant idea. She had Ning Qing sit down and lowered her voice to speak to him. Ning Qing listened carefully before giving her a thumbs up. Brilliant. Truly brilliant. This subordinate admires you. Han Yunxi finally exhaled. She too felt that her move had been too brilliant. If not for the urgency of the situation, she might not have come up with such an idea. I'll be able to see Han Yunxi's biological father very soon. That very day, at Han Yunxi's request, Ning Qing gave Chu Qingga a grand funeral and sent the little emperor, who wasn't even 3 years old, to the medical academy. Esteemed Wang Fei, the medical academy is under Long Fei Ye's control. This isn't appropriate, Ning Qing didn't tell Han Yunxi. What does this have to do with him? Medical City sealed off the city to search for the missing person only because I'm the head of the medical academy and the head of the poison sect. Long Fei Yi still has the authority to order around department head Ju. I'm afraid that he still refuses to acknowledge my identity and misled the department head. Han Yunxi pretended to laugh coldly as she spoke. When I admit my identity in the future, Medical City won't give Long Fei Yi any face. Ning Qing looked at Han Yunxi and recalled her previous oath. In the end, he believed her words. You don't have to send him there in your name. Just send him there in the name of Tianning's imperial clan, Han Yunxi sighed. Medical City has a responsibility to him, so they won't refuse. In the end, he's still a pitiful child. Don't let him attend the funeral. All right, Ning Qing agreed easily. Han Yunxi disguised herself as a court lady and attended Chu Qingga's funeral. Once the ceremony was over, Ning Qing sent Bai Yuqiao a secret missive. He didn't say whether he'd already kidnapped Han Yunxi, but only asked Bai Yuqiao to bring the Imperial Jade Seal to the capital. Han Yunxi couldn't sit still in her room. In the end, she decided to take a risk. As soon as she left the room, her attendant bowed respectfully. Your Royal Highness, where are you going? Compared to Medical City, Ning Qing was much less guarded against her. This was all thanks to Han Yunxi's malicious oath. Most of the guards by her side were there to protect her, not to spy on her. Han Yunxi had a chance to escape, but there was no need for her to do so. There was nowhere safer than Ning Qing's place. She had no idea what Long Fei Ye's attitude was. Perhaps she'd die if she ran to Long Fei Ye's place. Thinking up to here, she couldn't help but smile bitterly. She couldn't even ask him the question she wanted to ask him face to face. I want to see that little emperor. Have someone lead the way, Han Yunqi said. He's with Grand Concubine Ning. This subordinate will take you there. The attendant was very attentive. A crafty look flitted past Han Yunqi's eyes before she feigned indifference. We'll be sending him off tomorrow morning. Have you packed up your luggage? Chapter 8:24. Han Yunqi's arrival at Ning An's palace surprised Ning An. She was about to pay her respects when she was stopped. Ning An was much younger than Han Yunqi expected. Although she was Ning Cheng's older sister, she was only a year or two older than him. Han Yunqi couldn't see the calmness of a woman who chanted Buddhist scriptures all year round. Instead, she seemed capable and sharp. Han Yunqi couldn't help but think of Ning Jing, who'd cried her eyes out in front of her. She didn't know how she and Tang Li were doing. Some women might cry, but the burden on their shoulders didn't lose out to a man's. The strength in their bones wouldn't lose out to a man either. Ning Jing and Tang Li's dispute over weapons and assassination weapons had now become a struggle between Western Qin and East Qin imperial clans. The Tang clan was Long Fei Ye's most hidden power. Even though Long Fei Ye's identity as a member of the East Qin imperial clan and the Bailey armies by clan had been exposed, Han Yunqi still didn't know about the Tang clan. How much did Ning Jing know about it? Your Royal Highness, Long Zun is in the back courtyard. This subordinate will take you there. Ning An's words interrupted Han Yunqi's train of thought. The little prince's name was Long Zun, a name bestowed upon him by Emperor Tianhui himself. After ascending the throne, his reign name was Yong Guang. Although he was the emperor, the number of times he'd attended court could be counted on one hand. No one outside the palace treated him as such, much less inside. Everyone simply called him by his name. Others said that a mother's status depended on her son's, but in his case, a son followed his mother's footsteps. Han Yunqi passed through the room and saw a small bundle on the table. It had to be Long Zun's luggage. She purposely slowed her steps to observe the room. It was obvious that this room had been temporarily vacated for Long Zun and his wet nurse. Ning An's bedroom was on the other side. Before Chu Chinga's death, Long Zun had always been with her. That's all you packed? Is it enough? Han Yunqi asked casually. That's all he has. Chu Chinga didn't care about the child when she was alive, so she never gave him anything. These are all clothes. Ning An saw that Han Yunqi's expression wasn't very good, but she didn't speak either. She wondered why Han Yunqi would worry about Chu Chinga's child when she and Chu Chinga had been rivals for so long. Han Yunqi didn't leave but slowly sat down. She opened the luggage and asked unhappily, "You're the one who makes the decisions in the imperial harem. Tianning's imperial clan isn't weak, and your Cloud Realm Trade Consortium is rich and overbearing. Do you only lack a few clothes for this little doll?" "I'm innocent, Your Highness," Ning An hurriedly explained. "The allowance for the harem is given by this subordinate. What should be given to her has always been given according to the Empress Dowager's specifications. The child is Chu Chinga's own, but she doesn't care. How can an outsider care so much?" "That's true." Han Yunqi smiled coldly. She picked out a few pieces of clothing from the luggage and looked at them with interest. For a long time she didn't speak. Ning An had no idea what Han Yunqi was planning, but her eyes never left Han Yunqi's hands. Of course, Han Yunqi was racking her brains to think of a way to get Long Zun to deliver the questions she wanted to ask. For one thing, she couldn't let Ning An find out. For another, the luggage would pass through countless hands on Long Zun's journey from Tianning to Medical City. How could she guarantee its safety? For another, how was she supposed to deliver it to someone she trusted in Medical City? This was a risky move. As long as something went wrong and Ning Qing found out the truth, Han Yunqi would be finished. She couldn't even imagine what a wolf in sheep's clothing like Ning Qing would do to her. However, this was her only chance. "Your Highness, is there something wrong with these clothes?" Ning An was the first to lose her cool. Han Yunqi arched a brow at her. "What do you think?" "This subordinate." Ning An thought for a while. "These are the clothes that the child usually wears. There's nothing wrong with them." Han Yunqi immediately tossed aside the clothes in her hands and swept everything on the table to the floor. "If the medical academy's people see these things, Won't they curse our Western Qin for being so heartless that we can't even treat a child well? Chu Qingda's already dead, so the child's in the Ning clan's hands. The Ning clan has to take responsibility for him. If you can't even treat a child well, how can your Ning clan conquer the world for this princess? How can you treat the people well? Han Yunshi stood up and murmured, Ning'an, losing the Ning clan's face is a small matter, but losing Medical City's heart is a huge matter. Gu Beiyue's whereabouts are unknown and I'm not in the city. Right now, the Medical Academy is under the joint leadership of the Vice Council and Council of Elders. Xin Jueming's words are in charge of the Vice Council, while Luo Zuishan's words are in charge of the Council of Elders. These two detest child abusers the most. Back then, Gu Yuntian even wanted to protect Ling Gai, but these two were the ones who opposed him to the end and expelled him from Medical City. Ning'an immediately understood Han Yunshi's words. Although Han Yunshi was more capable of controlling Medical City than Long Fei Yi, the Ning clan couldn't afford to offend Medical City. Once Western Qin's imperial clan raised its flag and officially fought with East Qin for control of the world, Medical City's support would be crucial. Whether it was in the medical field or in the hearts of the people, it would have a huge impact. Not only could the Ning clan avoid offending Medical City, they had to curry favor and leave them with a good impression. In other words, Han Yunshi was reminding her that sending Long Zun over was the best chance to curry favor with Medical City. Many thanks to your highness for the advice. Ning'an rejoiced. A sly glint flashed through Han Yunshi's eyes and she said in all seriousness, no need to thank me. Just do it well. Everything is for the sake of our Western Qin. Ning'an immediately ordered people to buy all kinds of clothes, shoes, hats and other things for Long Zun. Han Yunshi listened silently and finally added, how can a wet nurse be enough? He should at least have a sensible nanny, a few maids and eunuchs and bodyguards to protect him. It would be best if he had a page boy to accompany him. Ning'an looked at Han Yunshi with a puzzled expression and some suspicion. Is it a lot? Han Yunshi asked. Your Highness, wouldn't this be too much and end up making a fool of ourselves? Ning'an asked. Han Yunshi impatiently rolled her eyes at her. If you don't do this, how can you show your compassion for this child who was forced into labor? He's different from other children. Even if it's too much to show him more care, it's understandable. Your Highness, this child is already an orphan. If we send him to Medical City, he won't be able to live like a pampered emperor, right? Even if we send these people over, Medical City will return them, Ning'an said. That's exactly what I want. Once they return them, you can send a few more over to show your sincerity. Moreover, you can send them in your own name. In this way, won't you and Vice Academy head Shen become familiar with each other? Han Yunshi sighed helplessly. Ning'an, when it comes to business, you're definitely not as good as your sister. For a moment, Ning'an couldn't find any words to refute Han Yunshi. She felt that Han Yunshi's move could really win over Medical City's heart and pave the way for the future. She accepted it all and immediately ordered people to do as Han Yunshi said. Remember, you must find someone you can rely on, Ning'an said seriously. Han Yunshi sipped her tea while blinking her sly eyes. No one knew what she was thinking. Long Zun was originally supposed to be sent away today, but because of Han Yunshi's interference, it could only be delayed for 2 days. Han Yunshi was immersed in her own thoughts when suddenly, a child's cry came from the backyard. Han Yunshi hurried over and saw Long Zun's wet nurse struggling for his life, wailing loudly and calling out from time to time, but she couldn't make out what he was saying. What's going on? Han Yunshi asked. He was just like this when he was sent here. He was playing well when he suddenly started crying. I can't even coax him. I don't know what he wants to do, Ning'an replied. He still can't speak? Han Yunshi asked in shock. He doesn't even know how to say mother. The wet nurse said that this child learns slower than other children of the same age. He's already 2 years old, but he's only just learned how to talk and walk, Ning'an answered truthfully. I'm afraid it's because of the premature birth. Han Yunshi's heart felt stifled and she couldn't help but think of Gu. At this time, Long Zun cried out again and pointed outside the door. Is he going to be unable to find his mother? Han Yunshi asked. The wet nurse hurriedly handed the crying Long Zun over to a palace maid to deal with and quickly walked over. Your Highness, this child won't look for his mother. The number of times Empress Dowager Chu held him can be counted with 5 fingers. Normally in the palace, even if Empress Dowager Chu sat in front of him, he wouldn't pay attention to her. He still doesn't know what a mother is. I'm afraid it's because this place is unfamiliar that he's looking for his mother. Hurry and take him out. Don't disturb your highness, Ning'an reprimanded unhappily. She, who had been infertile for many years, always felt complicated when she saw a child. The wet nurse hurriedly carried Long Zun over. Long Zun saw that Han Yunshi had suddenly quieted down. He looked at her for a while, then his small hand pointed outside the door and he suddenly cried out, "Mother!" He wanted to find his mother. Even if his mother didn't want him, he still wanted his mother. For a moment, everyone was silent, leaving only the child's cries. In a child's world there was no such thing as good or evil. There were no statuses or benefits, only dependence connected by blood. This child didn't know what kind of person Chu Chinga was or whose hands he was in, much less the current situation in Cloud Realm continent. All he knew was that he had a mother, who said he wouldn't look for her. In this world, even a child as young as him had been hurt. What was the point of all the fighting for benefits? They couldn't even satisfy the wishes of a little child, so how could they have the face to call themselves powerful? Eastern and Western Qin hated each other, but had they ever considered how many innocent commoners would hate them as well? Hurry and take him back. Ning'an suddenly raged, her expression fearful and uneasy. She'd completely forgotten herself. After serving Emperor Tianhui for so many years, how could she not have children? But she wouldn't allow herself to have any. As the cries faded into the distance, Han Yunshi and Ning'an both exhaled in relief. Ning'an Eastern-Western Qin and Eastern-Western Qin used to live in harmony with each other. Just who instigated the civil war back then? Han Yunshi asked seriously. She'd learned from Long Fei Yi that the floods in the south had caused plagues and famine. Both Eastern and Western Qin had sent out imperial envoys to fight the floods, but Western Qin had spread rumors among the victims that the East Qin crown prince was the reincarnation of a star of calamity who'd bring endless calamities to Cloud Realm continent. Back then the East Qin emperor was sickly and weak. The crown prince's ascension to the throne was imminent, so Western Qin's rumors were used by the East Qin imperial princes. After the emperor passed away, a power struggle broke out and destabilized the court. Western Qin seized the chance to start a war. Chapter 825. Both sides became enemies and fought a civil war, so now they both have their own opinions. Han Yunshi knew that Ning'an would say the same thing as Long Fei Yi, but she never would have thought that it would be different to this degree. Ning'an said that in the past, there was a serious disagreement between Eastern and Western Qin. This was the reason why Western Qin decided to go to war. Your Highness, there was a large dam in the middle of the Sand River that stopped the flood, protecting a large province downstream as well as countless villages and fields. That year there was a storm and a mountain flood upstream. The flood passed through the middle of the Sand River, submerging many villages and threatening an iron mine. That iron mine belonged to the East Qin crown prince. In order to protect the iron mine, East Qin decided to destroy the dam and divert the water downstream, sacrificing the people downstream. At that time the East Qin emperor died of illness and the princes were fighting for the throne. The crown prince was in a rush to build weapons, so he sent the army to destroy the dam. Western Qin had no choice but to send out troops to protect the dam. East Qin thought that our army was trying to steal the mine and sent out troops, using the Black Race army to destroy our Western Qin. If it wasn't for the Nether Race's betrayal, the princess might not have. Although Ning'an's voice was calm, her eyes betrayed her heart. Han Yunshi could see her anger and unwillingness. This anger and unwillingness was very similar to when Long Fei Yi told her this part of the history. It was very real and couldn't be faked. It was natural for them to have their own opinions, but if they didn't have the same opinion, then it would be abnormal. Long Fei Yi had told her about the serious floods in the south, but why didn't he tell her about the dam or the mine? According to East Qin, the war was a plot by Western Qin. Western Qin instigated internal strife in East Qin and took advantage of the situation. According to Western Qin, the war was caused by the destruction of the dam. What was the truth? Han Yunshi hesitated a bit before probing. I remember that Gu Beiyue told me that during the war, there were rumors in the disaster area that the East Qin crown prince was a star of disaster? Is there such a thing? Han Yunshi silently apologized to Gu Beiyue in her heart. If she said that it was Long Fei Yi who said it, Ning'an would probably be angry. She could only use Gu Beiyue's name to speak properly. Ning'an gave a cold laugh. This was a lie made up by the East Qin princes to seize the throne. Now it seems that the East Qin prince is a disaster. If he did not protect the iron mine, Western Qin would not have rashly sent troops. Han Yunqi nodded thoughtfully. She suddenly had a terrifying thought. Was there a misunderstanding in the past? However, she quickly denied her own thoughts. How could she believe Long Fei Ye's explanation? Long Fei Yi already knew that she was the princess of Western Qin. How could he tell her the truth of the war? On the other hand, Ning'an had no reason to lie to her. Han Yunqi sat for a while before leaving. She had to finish writing the letter before Long Zun was sent away. She had already thought of how to write the letter. She could not bear to do anything to a pitiful child like Long Zun, so she could only wrong the others. Not long after Han Yunqi left, Ning Qing came over. Knowing that Han Yunqi had just left, he turned around to leave, but Ning'an called out to him. "You just came and you're already leaving? So you didn't come to see me?" Ning'an lightly asked. Who would have thought that Ning Qing would actually give a unsound and continue to leave? Ning'an reached out to stop him. "Family head, you should know your status." Before, Ning'an followed the rules of the palace and called Ning Qing King Ning. But now she called him family head. This meant that Ning'an was reminding Ning Qing of his status, his responsibilities, and what he could and could not do. "Move aside." Ning Cheng's voice was completely emotionless. It was extremely cold, like an iceberg that kept people 1,000 li away. One would never be able to see his heart. Only in front of Han Yunqi would he be happy, angry, and anxious. Everyone sighed with emotion at the sight of the lofty Ning Qing having to put down his airs in front of the princess. But Ning'an knew that Ning Qing wasn't submitting or being respectful, but being confused and lost. Perhaps that was why Han Yunqi wasn't like Chu Qingge, who felt that Ning Qing was similar to Long Fei Yi. His joy at finding his master should have died down long ago. He should be back to his usual prudent, steady, and calm self. Everything in the D clan was still under his control and had to be controlled by him. The princess of Western Qin was only a symbol of faith. She couldn't control anything, so the last thing he should lose was his sense of control over himself. Ning'an had seen all of Ning Cheng's actions since their return. Her heart was full of worries, so she had to remind him. Ning Cheng's ice face was expressionless. After a while he asked coldly, "Is there anything else?" Ning'an told him about Long Zun and he agreed with Han Yunqi's words. In a low voice he said, "Arrange for 2 spies. Ning Jing hasn't sent word for days. I need information from her side." Understood. Ning'an had the same idea. "Jing, she won't be in trouble, right? She's still arguing with Tang Li about my departure, so nothing's going to happen." Ning Qing trusted Ning Jing more than Ning'an or Ning Nuo. Urge Ning Nuo on the matter of the army rations. Don't drop the ball at a critical moment. Although South Ning's commander-in-chief's estate controlled most of Cloud Realm Continent's grain production areas, Cloud Realm Trade Consortium wasn't easy to deal with. They could still buy grain from them. In this world there were plenty of people who went against their conscience to make money from war. Moreover, Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's secret of being a descendant of the D clan had already been exposed. There were even more grain merchants willing to work with them. Ning Jing mused that the Tang clan was a hidden power that never got involved in worldly conflicts, much less a huge one between 2 imperial clans. If the Tang clan elders knew about Ning Jing's status as a D clan member, it'd be even harder for them to agree to work with the arms trade. If she couldn't complete her mission within a year, Ning Qing wouldn't give her a chance to return to Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. Ning Qing and Ning'an had no idea that the youngest daughter of the Ning clan, the shrewdest head of Cloud Realm Trade Consortium, was currently suffering torment. Tang Li had said he'd give her 1 night, but he'd actually given her 2 days and 2 nights. Over the past 2 days he'd given her nothing but water. Ning Jing was hanging from the ceiling and couldn't even sit down. Fortunately, she could reach a table and sit on it for the past 2 days. If not for that, she wouldn't have lasted half a day. She didn't make a fuss but was incomparably calm. When she was serious, she looked like a fierce woman who wasn't cute at all. She didn't know what Tang Li had been doing over the past 2 days, but he'd actually forgotten about her. Trapped here, she had no idea what was going on outside. Could it be that Ning Cheng's whereabouts had been exposed? Long Fei Yi and Tang Li were both chasing after Ning Qing, so they'd forgotten about her here? Thinking up to here, Ning Jing couldn't help but knit her brows in anxiety. But she quickly recovered her composure. There were many things she couldn't control, so she might as well let them happen. Right now she could only control herself and let herself die peacefully here. It was good that Tang Li had left her here. She had no idea that Long Fei Yi had left long ago. Over the past 2 days, Tang Li had been tasked with searching and arresting people in Medical City. Tang Li hadn't gone anywhere but sat by the door in a daze. For the past 2 days and 2 nights she had drunk water, but he hadn't drunk a single drop. His haggard and sorrowful appearance made him no longer look like a banished immortal. Instead he looked like an infatuated person who was about to turn into ashes. Suddenly Tang Li stood up and angrily pushed the door open. Ning Jing was startled, but she didn't show it. It wasn't until she saw the most familiar figure at the door that her heart began to beat faster. Hee, I've been busy for 2 days and didn't have time to take care of you. You're lucky. Tang Li didn't approach her but stood at the door. Shouldn't you give me an answer? Ning Jing just looked at him without saying anything. This forced Tang Li to draw closer until he was right in front of her. Answer me. Kill me or cut me up, do whatever you want. Ning Jing said coldly. Guards. Tang Li didn't hesitate anymore and the guards immediately rushed in. Tang Li personally took the iron chain hanging from the roof beam and handed it to the guards. Drop it at the South City gate. Don't let her torture you slowly. Ning Jing didn't react at all and just walked to the door with the guards. Jing, you don't have to be afraid. Your good brother will definitely come and save you. Tang Li sneered. Only God knew if he was comforting himself or testing Ning Jing. Finally Ning Jing stopped. Tang Li, if you spare me, I'll tell you another piece of news. How about it? What news? Tang Li asked almost without thinking, and at the same time he waved the guards away. A piece of news that's very beneficial to the Tang sect. It's not inferior to Han Yunxi's whereabouts. Ning Jing was like a businessman negotiating with a professional smile. Spare you? To what extent? Tang Li asked in return. He definitely wouldn't let Ning Jing go. Give me a good death. Ning Jing was very direct. In an instant Tang Li's eyes were like the sky before a storm, so gloomy that it was frightening. Unfortunately Ning Jing was standing at the door and didn't see it. Just like when Tang Li was standing at the door and didn't see her in the room, he had a pleasantly surprised expression. They tell me. Tang Li still agreed. Ning Qing still doesn't know about your relationship with Long Fei Yi. I'm the only one who knows about this, Ning Jing said seriously. Tang Li was shocked, but he soon questioned, who are you trying to fool? I led you to the apricot forest just to test you. Sure enough, you took Long Fei Yi there. At this moment, Ning Jing was as calm as her name suggested. She had always been suspicious. Since Tang Li helped Han Yunxi at the apricot forest conference, she had been suspicious. The Cold War later was just a pretense. Even though she had seen Ning Qing several times, she never told Ning Qing about these abnormalities. She needed to give herself a definite answer. Therefore, after Ning Qing left, she deliberately lured Tang Li to the apricot forest. She hoped so much that it was only Tang Li who followed her. Unfortunately, it was Long Fei Yi who showed up. Without a doubt, Tang Li was the one who took Long Fei Yi there. He tested me. Ning Qing doesn't know about my relationship with Long Fei Yi. Tang Li muttered to himself. Suddenly he understood. That's why Ning Qing left Medical City long ago. He doesn't know that you led us to the apricot forest. If Ning Qing was still in the medical academy, he would definitely be secretly keeping an eye on Ning Jing's movements. Ning Jing didn't have a chance to tell Ning Qing about his relationship with Long Fei Yi. Ning Jing smiled. She never thought that Tang Li was so smart. Tang Li, I've told you 2 secrets. Just kill me with a knife. Tang Li gave a start but quickly rushed out the door. Su Donglin, remove all defenses and tell your master that Han Yunxi is in Tianing. After rushing out, Tang Li didn't return to the room. He ordered people to untie Ning Jing and put her under house arrest. He wouldn't kill her, but he wouldn't see her either. Long Fei Yi received Tang Li's news and was preparing to deploy a rescue plan when he received Bailey Yuanlong's secret missive mentioning Gu Beiyue. Chapter 826. Bailey Yuanlong's letter mentioned Gu Beiyue's whereabouts, but didn't mention the specifics. He wanted Long Fei Yi to return to the army as soon as possible to preside over the situation. With news of Gu Beiyue, that meant Gu Beiyue wasn't dead. However, Long Fei Yi didn't feel happy at all after reading the letter. Instead, his gaze turned complicated. Bailey Yuanlong was far away on the battlefield, and Gu Beiyue had fallen into the abyss of the poison sect's forbidden grounds. He'd sent countless people to search for Gu Beiyue, but there was no news. How did Bailey Yuanlong know of Gu Beiyue's whereabouts? Was this news true or fake? Moreover, the letter didn't mention a single word. What did Bailey Yuanlong mean by this? Did this look like a report to him? This was clearly a threat. Long Fei Yi knew full well how much the merfolk hated Western Qin's imperial clan. How many of their clansmen had the Bai clan sacrificed during the floods in the south to stop the river from overflowing again and again? The Bai clan members who'd sacrificed themselves couldn't even leave behind their names. Even the good deeds they'd done for the people were unknown to this day. This was because the Bai clan had to guard the secret of the merfolk. The merfolk dove into the water and risked their lives to stop the river from overflowing again and again, but no one on the shore knew. Their corpses sank to the bottom of the sandy river without a sound. The Bai clan had sacrificed so much, but Western Qin's emperor had actually started a war during the floods. He'd even mobilized the flood troops to attack East Qin's troops. If this could be tolerated, what else could not be? Perhaps the merfolk hated Western Qin even more than East Qin. Thus, Bailey Yuanlong had resolutely defied his ancestors' teachings and revealed the secret of the Bai clan being merfolk. He refused to conceal his identity. After Han Yunxi's identity was exposed, Long Fei Yi wasn't most wary of the Tang clan or the Shadow Guard, but Bailey Yuanlong and his merfolk army. Bailey Yuanlong had a large army in his hands. Once he learned of the truth, the consequences would be unimaginable for even Long Fei Yi. After hesitating for a while, Long Fei Yi ordered someone to deliver a letter to Gu. Then he resolutely changed his route and headed straight for the battlefield. Gu had just reached Tianning's capital when he received Long Fei Ye's letter. At this moment he was like a cheetah in the night, lurking near the palace with his eyes narrowed, ready to pounce on his prey at any moment. "Qi brother, are you sure that Han Yunxi is in the palace?" Mu Ling'er looked anxious. The imperial palace was the most heavily guarded and had the most traps. If he acted rashly without investigating thoroughly, the losses would outweigh the gains. God knows how many traps Ningqing had set for them. "Don't make a fuss. Move aside, you're in the way." "I don't have time to save you," Gu waved his hand impatiently. It was obvious that he wanted to get rid of Mu Ling. Mu Ling'er's skin had long been thickened and her heart hardened. She didn't mind his disdain. "Qi brother, let's talk about this properly, all right?" Mu Ling'er grabbed Gu's hand and yanked him off the wall. Ever since they left the poison sect's abyss and heard that Han Yunxi was in trouble, Qi brother had been running all the way here. He hadn't even given the matter a second thought. Gu's gaze turned cold. If this was the past, Mu Ling'er would have been scared stiff long ago. But now she wasn't afraid even if he really wanted to kill her. "Scram," he said coldly. "Why are you looking for Han Yunxi? She's the princess of Western Qin. What can Ningqing do to her when he kidnaps her? He might as well worship her like a bodhisattva." Mu Ling'er pursed her lips. "Qi brother, you can't be thinking of helping Long Fei Yi kidnap the princess of Western Qin, right?" Gu finally calmed down. He suddenly realized that he didn't know why he was looking for Poison Lass either. She was the princess of Western Qin. Ningqing had saved her from Long Fei Yi, not kidnap her. What about him? Could he still take her to the ends of the world? He had lied to her about Mute Granny. He was Long Fei Ye's accomplice. "Qi brother, the Duke of Qin might have sent people to keep an eye on you," Mu Ling'er added. Gu's face paled. Mu Ling'er was about to speak when Gu suddenly roared, "Shut up." So saying, he leapt over the palace walls and slipped inside. He was going to apologize for Mute Granny. "Qi brother, calm down." Mu Ling'er chased after him. It was late at night. Bai Yuqiao and Bai Yanqing had just arrived at the imperial city. Ning'an came out to receive them and arranged for them to stay in the palace. Bai Yanqing hid her identity and pretended to be Jun Yixie's subordinate, Uncle Bai. Once Ning'an left, Bai Yanqing said in a low voice, "Pack up. We'll go see the princess immediately." "Master." Bai Yuqiao had just spoken when Bai Yanqing glared at her. She then realized that the walls had ears. She quickly changed her words. Uncle Bai, the princess is already asleep. It's not appropriate to disturb her so late at night. Old man was entrusted by master to give the imperial jade seal to the princess as soon as he arrived at the imperial city. I'm sure the princess knows master's sincerity and won't blame him. Bai Yanqing said. Bai Yuqiao understood that master was doing this to express his loyalty. After she packed up, she sent someone to inform Ningyan. How could Han Yunxi fall asleep at this time? She was in the secret room behind the tea room, waiting for Ning Qing to meet Bai Yuqiao and Uncle Bai. She had been waiting all night. These days she had to stay in this secret room and couldn't go out. She originally wanted to cultivate the third stage of the poison storage space, but unfortunately she couldn't calm down. Soon Ning Qing met Bai Yuqiao and his disciple. Master Ning, sorry for the disrespect. Bai Yuqiao was very enthusiastic, but Bai Yanqing didn't say a word. Ning Qing only nodded to Bai Yuqiao. He looked at Bai Yanqing. This is Uncle Bai? Yes, I pay my respects to Master Ning. Bai Yanqing cupped his fists and bowed, calm and composed. When will Jun Yixia come? Ning Qing asked. My master has already negotiated with the Winter Crow tribe's chief. He should be leaving for the country in a few days. The number of war horses he brought back will definitely satisfy Master Ning. Bai Yanqing said. Ning Qing asked, how many? He will bring them back in 3 batches, no less than 30,000 in each batch. Bai Yanqing was calm and collected, but when he said this number he couldn't hide his pride. Ning Cheng's heart skipped a beat. He remembered Han Yunxi's warning. Sure enough, Northern Li's cavalry couldn't be ignored. With these 3 batches of war horses and Northern Li's original cavalry, 100,000 cavalry was more than enough. The Ning family army and Long Fei Yi were fighting to the death, but in the end Jun Yixia was the fisherman who reaped the benefits. Ning Cheng's first thought was to stop the war. Only by stopping the war with East Qin could he preserve his strength. He had to first expose the Wind Clan's scheme and remove the threat of the Wind Clan. Otherwise, the world would fall into the Wind Clan's hands and everyone would become their dowry. At the very least he had to drag it out. He had to drag it out until Northern Li's cavalry could fight alongside the Ning family army. This way he could use the Wind Clan to restrain them. He never thought that he would have to rely on Long Fei Ye's troops to deal with the Wind Clan. Ning Cheng's lips unconsciously curled into a self-deprecating smile. Pledging loyalty was his destiny and restoring his country was his mission. He couldn't escape the word, destiny. As for the word, destiny, he had never thought about it and didn't dare think about it. The path of loyalty was too lonely for him to walk on. Very good. Ning Qing forced out a smile. How long will it take for the first batch of war horses to enter the battlefield? From Winter Crow country to Northern Li, then from Northern Li to the south. The war horses will need to rest before the war, around a month and a half. Bai Yanqing replied. Don't they need to be trained? Ning Qing asked in confusion. No need, my master has convinced the Winter Crow country's horse trainer. A single horse trainer can command 10,000 war horses. Bai Yanqing couldn't hide his pride. Jun Yixia had truly exceeded his expectations this time. Jun Yixia is quite skilled. Ning Qing asked, what about the second and third batches? When will they arrive? He had to ask clearly in case Bai Yanqing kept the second and third batches of war horses to deal with him. That's hard to say. It depends on the road conditions. In another month it will snow in the north. Bai Yanqing gave a reasonable answer. Ning Qing became even more vigilant. He was glad that Han Yunxi had warned him of the Feng clan's disloyalty. He didn't express his opinion and changed the topic. Where is the Imperial Jade Seal? Of course I brought it, but... Bai Yanqing was very polite. It's already so late. I wonder if it's convenient for Her Highness to receive you? What he meant was that he wouldn't hand over the Imperial Jade Seal until he saw Han Yunxi. Ning Qing sighed, then said indifferently, the princess is not in my hands. What? Bai Yanqing was shocked. Bai Yuqiao was very surprised. How can that be? They'd gotten news from Medicine City that Medical City had been sealed off for days. It was obvious that Han Yunxi had been kidnapped, while Ning Qing was in Medical City. If he wasn't the culprit, who else could it be? Han Yunxi is indeed not in Medical City. Not only is Long Fei Yi looking for her, but so am I. Could it be? Ning Qing started to speak but paused. Bai Yuqiao couldn't help but ask, "Who do you suspect?" "One person." Ning Qing was still hesitating. Bai Yanqing grew anxious. "Who?" "A member of the Shadow Clan." Ning Qing said coldly. Chu Qingge confessed before she died that Gu Beiyue was a descendant of the Shadow Clan. The medical academy said that Gu Beiyue was in closed-door cultivation. Could it be him? No way. Bai Yuqiao denied immediately. Bai Yanqing gave her an unhappy look. He could guess that Ning Qing would find out Gu Beiyue's identity from the Chu clan, but never expected that Han Yunxi wasn't in Ning Cheng's hands. Had he made the right choice this time, or had he made a mistake? "How can you be so sure?" Ning Qing asked immediately. Bai Yuqiao was quick-witted enough to answer. Gu Beiyue was in closed-door cultivation long before the princess went missing. How could he know of her identity? Moreover, even if he did, why did he kidnap the princess? He should have brought her to you instead. Ning Qing laughed coldly in his heart. He stroked his smooth chin thoughtfully. "The only thing we can do now is to search for the princess. I'll have to ask old Bai to personally oversee the battlefield. Finding the princess is the most important thing, but..." Bai Yanqing's expression was serious. "But old man has the heart but not the strength. Leaving aside old man, even my master wouldn't be able to defeat the East Qin army with just the Qimen Duanjia." Bai Yanqing was of course afraid that Ning Qing would send him to the battlefield and leave Bai Yuqiao behind. Moreover, the Wind Clan's Qimen Duanjia formation required enough troops. With Ning Cheng's current troops and the Wind Clan's formation, they could only fight evenly with the East Qin army. It was impossible for them to fight back. Since Han Yunxi had gone missing, he had to find her first. He was not in a rush to make a move on the battlefield. If this continued, the Ning family army would suffer the greatest losses. When Jun Yixie's first batch of horses arrived, the northernly cavalry would be hard to dismount. Ning Qing would have no troops in his hands, so he wouldn't be able to control the situation. Bai Yanqing thought he had a good reason, but who would have thought that Ning Qing would say, He, Uncle Bai really knows how to joke. How could I let you fight 100 soldiers by yourself? I only need you to assist my Ning family army and temporarily stop the war. It won't be too late to raise morale after we find the princess." At this time, a guard's report came from outside the door. "Master, there's an assassin." Chapter 827. An assassin? A complicated look flashed past Ning Cheng's eyes. Coldly he asked, "What's going on?" "Reporting to Master, we discovered an assassin at Yanling Palace. It's just one person and he's highly skilled in martial arts." The guard reported truthfully. Ning Qing looked at Bai Yanqing and discovered that Bai Yanqing was also looking at him. He sneered, "Another one sent by Long Fei Yi to kidnap the princess, right? Why does he believe that the princess is with me?" The word, "another," let Ning know that it was purposely said for Bai Yanqing to hear. After Ning Qing brought the princess back, it was the first time an assassin had broken in. Moreover, whether or not the assassin was targeting the princess was still to be investigated. Ning hurriedly persuaded, "Clan head, the princess is clearly not in our palace. Why don't you make an announcement to reveal the truth? What if Long Fei Yi released the news and slandered us? If the world doesn't know, they might really think that we've kidnapped the princess." Bai Yanqing smiled, "That's not right. Even if the princess is in the hands of the Ning family, it's still the Ning family who saved the princess. What about kidnapping? The Long Fei Yi can't slander the Ning family." Ning smiled bitterly, "Uncle Bai, gossip is a fearful thing. The Long Fei Yi is very good at winning over people's hearts. If the world believes in the Long Fei Yi and we still haven't hung the Western Qin flag, the world will scold us for keeping the princess under house arrest and harboring evil intentions." Bai Yanqing smiled, "You're worrying too much. Why don't we hang the flag first? If the imperial seal is placed on the flag, it will definitely convince people." Ning Qing immediately refused with a cold expression. "Hanging the flag and placing the seal is the authority of the imperial family. The Di family and the Feng family don't have this right. Uncle Bai, this clan head will pretend that I didn't hear your words. Please don't speak nonsense again." Bai Yanqing could not refute. If he did, it would be the greatest disrespect to the royal family of Western Qin. He sneered in his heart. Ning Qing, this brat, would one day fall because of the word blind loyalty. Han Yunxi was hiding in the dark room, so she heard every word clearly. He was right. Ning Qing was not only a wolf, but a wolf as cunning as a fox. He and Ning An were able to use the unexpected assassin incident to their advantage. After hearing what they said, Bai Yanqing would be even more convinced that the Western Qin princess was not in Ning Cheng's hands. Making Bai Yanqing believe them was the first step in exposing Bai Yanqing's scheme. After all, Ning Qing was more anxious than anyone else to hang up the Western Qin military flag. Bai Yanqing would never have thought that Ning Qing would be so calm on this matter. This time Ning Qing was willing to let the child trap the wolf. Just as Han Yunxi let out a sigh of relief, a terrified cry almost made her heart stop beating. Master, master, the assassin is Shao Qi from Medical City. He's coming to kill us. Gu. Han Yunxi's first thought was to rush out and see Gu. She wanted to follow him and let him take her to see Long Fei Yi. Her body reacted faster than her brain, and she had already rushed to the stone door. However, Ning Cheng's words made her stop abruptly and calm down. Ning Cheng said, "He came at the right time. This clan head will let him search however he wants. Otherwise, Medical City will misunderstand that our D clan is disrespectful to the princess." Ning Cheng, this brat who had acted rashly in front of her several times, was able to calmly deal with all the unexpected situations. Han Yunxi silently leaned against the door and closed her eyes. She told herself, "Calm down." Once she went out, Bai Yanqing would definitely see through Ning Cheng's lie. Not only would all their previous efforts be in vain, but the consequences would also be very terrible. Bai Yanqing had just said that Jun Yixia would bring back nearly 100,000 war horses. In other words, Bai Yanqing's forces were enough to drive straight down and destroy Ning Qing and Long Fei Yi. At this moment, whether it was the princess of Western Qin or Han Yunxi herself, she had to calm down. As the princess of Western Qin, she had to protect Ning Qing. As Han Yunxi, she had to protect Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi and Ning Qing were facing the same enemy, the Feng clan. Besides, if she rushed out like this, what would Ning Qing think of her? Ning Qing would definitely see through her selfishness. With Gu's strength, how could he fight against Ning Cheng's thousands of ambushes in the palace? She and Gu couldn't escape. Han Yunxi was actually not calm at all. She wanted to see Long Fei Yi more than at this moment, but she gritted her teeth and endured. If two people loved each other for a long time, how could they be together day and night? However, Long Fei Yi, do you have feelings? Do you have feelings for each other? Even Gu Qishao is here, so where are you, Long Fei? Han Yunxi closed her eyes. Her eyebrows were full of fatigue. She had to feign civility with Ning Qing. Not only did she not arouse his suspicion, but she also had to find a way to delay him from personally leading the army. She had to rack her brains to come up with a plan to expose the Feng clan's conspiracy while hiding the black-clothed assassin's Tianshan swordsmanship. She had to take a risk and think of a way to do something to Long Zun's servant to send out the question she was obsessed with. How could she not be tired? In this world, who could she really trust? Gu Beiwei. When did the Shadow Clan's protection begin? Was it the first time he appeared in Tianqing or even earlier? Gu Qishao? She had been so persistent in Medicine Ghost Valley, but hadn't she been fooled by Mute Granny in the end? Even if she was tired, Han Yunxi still stood straight and did not fall. Not for anything else, but because she was not only the princess of Western Qin but also herself. She wanted the truth, she wanted an explanation. Only then could she make a choice that she would not regret. Han Yunxi, hang in there. Outside the secret chamber, before Gu could kill his way over, Ning Qing personally went over. Ning An chased after him, deliberately ignoring Bai Yanqing and Bai Yuqiao. The master and disciple naturally followed. As soon as Gu saw Ning Qing, he stabbed at him with his sword. Ning Qing also drew his sword to meet him. Hand over Han Yunxi, or I'll slaughter your entire palace. Gu was furious and could not keep his cool. Han Yunxi is not in my hands. Ning Qing did not budge an inch. If you want to slaughter my entire palace, you'll have to ask the sword in my hand first. Gu sneered but did not say anything. Ning Jing, your younger sister, admitted it herself. Han Yunxi was taken out of Medical City by you. Ning An was shocked. What did you do to Jing'er? Ning Qing was also shocked. When he left, Ning Jing and Tang Li were still in a cold war. What happened between the two of them? Gu directly ignored Ning An's question. He did not care about the relationship between Long Fei Yi and the Tang sect, or the relationship between Ning Jing and Tang Li. He only wanted Han Yunxi. A thorn seed shot out from the tip of his sword and fell at Ning Cheng's feet. Ning Cheng did not have time to escape and was instantly trapped by the wildly growing thorny vines. Gu's loose red robe fluttered wantonly in the wind. The thorny vines danced in the air, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. Hand over Han Yunxi, or else this old man promises to tear you to pieces. Gu warned coldly. The hostility in his eyes was even more terrifying than when he faced Gu Yuntian. Ning Cheng stood in place, not flustered at all. He was still as imposing as before. Cold as before, he said, "Gu, if you kill me, Long Fei Yi will laugh. Think about it. Before Long Fei Yi finds out about Han Yunxi's background, how can he keep her by his side?" "I don't care. I only want Han Yunxi," Gu said angrily. "Well, if you want to kill me, then do whatever you want," Ning Cheng said cold. Up until now, Bai Yanqing's gaze had never left Ning Cheng. "Uncle Bai, I'm afraid he really doesn't have her," Bai Yuqiao said in a low voice. Bai Yanqing responded in a low voice. "Then who kidnapped her?" Bai Yuqiao asked again. "That's strange. We can't be sure," Bai Yanqing said in a low voice. Gu was a man of his words. Under his control, the thorny vines quickly bound Ning Cheng tightly. Ning An's heart ached when he saw this. He hurriedly ordered, "Someone bring me the pearflower storm needles." Ning Cheng spent a lot of effort to learn how to use the pearflower storm needles. However, he couldn't bear to use it even once. It was because he wanted to save the pearflower storm needles to kill Long Fei Yi personally on the battlefield. "You're not allowed," Ning Cheng said angrily. "You'll die." Ning'an was really anxious now. Ning Cheng laughed out loud. "Gu Qishao, think it over clearly. Even you want to be used by Long Fei Yi?" No one knew what Gu was thinking. He looked at Ning Cheng coldly, almost going crazy. At this moment, the guards escorted Mu Ling'er over. It turned out that after Mu Ling'er entered the palace, she didn't manage to catch up with Gu. She could only search for him in the palace. With Mu Ling'er's mediocre skills, how could she not be discovered? Ning'an was overjoyed. Without hesitation, he pulled out the guard's sword and pointed it at Mu Ling'er's heart. He angrily said, "Gu, let go of Ning Cheng. Otherwise I'll kill her right now." Mu Ling'er originally wanted to say something, but when she heard this, she fell silent. She stared straight at Chi brother, not saying a word. Mu Ling'er originally feared Long Fei Yi, but now she hated Long Fei Yi. In her opinion, Chi brother was being used by Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi was guarding Medical City by himself, but with one sentence he provoked Chi brother and made him rush here day and night. Why didn't Chi brother listen to her advice? Han Yunxi was the princess of Western Qin, which meant that she was Ning Cheng's master. How could she be in danger? Why didn't Chi brother figure out the truth of the matter first before making a decision? Love could make people blind. How could she not be blind? She had clearly lost Chi brother, but she was stupid enough not to leave first. She was stupid enough to search all over the palace, hoping to help him find her. Chi Gij, Ling'er's life and death have finally fallen into your hands. Ling'er will wait. She will wait until you want Ling'er to live or die. In the face of Ning An's threat, Gu didn't even look at her. All his attention was on Ning Cheng. It wasn't that he was stupid to listen to Long Fei Yi. In this world, Ning Cheng was the most likely person to expose Han Yunxi. He had taken the initiative to expose his identity. If Han Yunxi was treated politely by Ning Cheng, she would have come out to see him, right? There were only two possibilities. Either Han Yunxi was really not here or Han Yunxi was under house arrest. The D clan and the Nether clan had ulterior motives. Everyone assumed that Gu Qishao had lost his mind, but his heart was clearer than anyone else. He was testing Ning Cheng. Blood flowed out of the thorny vines. It was Ning Cheng's blood. Ning'an couldn't bear it anymore. "Gu, you'd better not regret this." As soon as she finished speaking, she stabbed Mu Ling'er's abdomen with her sword. Mu Ling'er was on the verge of tears from bravery. She ignored the sword on and continued to look at her Chi Gij with deep feelings. Umo said, "Yesterday's update made a mistake in the age of the Ning siblings. Here's a correction. Ning Cheng is Ning An's eldest brother." Chapter 828. Life and death could be decided by a single thought. Gu was about to speak, but Ning Cheng beat him to it. "Ning'an, don't be impudent. Let her go or you'll be punished according to the clan's laws. Ning'an stopped abruptly, almost unable to believe her ears. However, Ningqing even mentioned the clan's laws, so she had no choice but to stop. The thorny vines wrapped around Ning Cheng's body and were still tightening. No one could see his body, only his blood flowing out from the gaps between the vines. Ning An's heart was completely broken, and the scene from many years ago appeared in her mind again. It was Ning Cheng's third expedition. When he was carried back to the military camp, he was covered in blood. At that time, Ning Cheng was only 15 years old. At this moment, Ning'an suddenly wished that she was the older sister who could protect her younger brother. Blood was flowing, but Ning Cheng was indifferent. He said coldly, "Why aren't you letting her go?" The guard hurriedly let go. Mu Linger was safe and sound and regained her freedom. Gu secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Gu Hanyunshi is the princess of Western Qin and the master of my D clan. I want to know where she is more than you do, and I want to see her more than you do. I don't want to be your enemy. If it's possible, let's find her together. Ning Qing said seriously. Gu didn't say a word, but Ning Qing clearly felt the thorny vines on his body stop. The night was silent, but it couldn't compare to Gu's silence. He was silent for a very long time. Everything seemed to be still and only Ning Cheng's blood was flowing. In the silence, Ning Cheng's firm voice sounded, "Gu, love is loyalty, it is submission. If you really like the princess, what's wrong with being with me?" As soon as he finished speaking, the thorny vines on Ning Cheng's body withered and fell. Ning Cheng was covered in cuts and bruises, but his smile was especially brilliant. No one knew that this high and mighty man would have such a brilliant smile, enough to illuminate the darkness of the long night. He walked in front of Gu and extended his bloody hand, but Gu ignored him. "I just want to find her. Inform me if you have any news. Send the letter to the Medicine Ghost Valley." Gu said and was about to leave. Ning'an stopped her. "Ning Jing, what's going on? Long Fei Yi told me that Ning Jing confessed, but I don't know the details." Gu pulled Mu Linger and left without looking back. "Master Ning, hurry up and treat your wounds. We'll talk about our business in detail tomorrow." "There's no hurry," Bai Yanqing said. Ning Qing nodded and asked Ning'an to send Bai Yanqing and his disciple back. Late at night, Ning Qing finished treating his wounds and went to see Han Yunshi. He told Han Yunshi everything. Han Yunshi let out a big sigh of relief and hurriedly said, "Quick, send someone to look for him. Go to the restaurant, he'll go drink." Ning Qing smiled helplessly. "Esteemed Wang Fei, are you still worried about this subordinate's work? This subordinate has sent someone to follow him. Gu should know the truth by now and is on his way back." Han Yunshi was overjoyed. With Gu's arrival, Ning Qing had turned a disaster into a blessing. They wanted to deal with Bai Yanqing. With Gu around, they would have an additional force. Seeing Ning Qing covered in cuts and bruises, Han Yunshi finally felt compassion for this man. This guy didn't have it easy either. At least his innocent feelings were all on Western Qin's side. That Uncle Bai must be Jun Yixie's master, a member of the Feng clan. Ning Qing said seriously. Han Yunshi nodded and said in a low voice, "Since he's let down his guard and Gu is here, let's make our move tomorrow. How about it?" Ning Qing had worked so hard tonight just to make Bai Yanqing trust them. As long as Bai Yanqing trusted them, he'd lower his guard and give them a chance. Ning Qing was silent. Han Yunshi anxiously said, "We must do this as soon as possible. Ning Qing, every day you hesitate, Jun Yixie's warhorses will get closer to you. When the time comes, what will you use to fight them?" Actually, Ning Qing had been putting on an act since he saw Bai Yanqing tonight. He and Han Yunshi had already discussed this beforehand. They would lure Bai Yuqiao and Uncle Bai here to lower his guard and find a chance to make their move. Ning Qing had enough men to trap Bai Yanqing and his disciple. No matter how strong Bai Yanqing's martial arts were, he wouldn't be able to defeat 1,000 archers lying in ambush in the palace. As for poisons, Han Yunshi had promised Ning Qing that he could leave it to her. After capturing Bai Yanqing, they would expose all of Bai Yanqing's schemes. It was too easy to expose Bai Yanqing's schemes. All they had to do was force him to use his poison arts and reveal his poison storage space. That would be enough to convince the world. The poison sect's descendant wasn't human. As a descendant of the poison sect, she was bound to be disloyal, wasn't she? As long as they handed Bai Yanqing over to the Northernly Imperial clan, they would be able to restrain Jun Yixia. Han Yunshi had already learned about Northern Li's political situation from Long Fei Ye's spies. The Northern Li crown prince had been injured in Winter Crow Village and died on the way back. The second prince had died in Winter Crow Village as well. How could the Northern Dynasty's emperors trust Jun Yixia? Jun Yixia had so many warhorses. As long as the Northern Li imperial clan didn't provide them with soldiers, it didn't matter how many warhorses they had. As long as they handed Bai Yanqing over to the Northern Dynasty's emperors, the Northern Dynasty's emperors would have enough capital to threaten Jun Yixia. As long as Jun Yixia fought with the Northern Li imperial clan, he wouldn't have time to worry about the south. The Ning clan troops would have nothing to worry about. Everything was fine, but Ning Qing was hesitating. Princess, 100,000 Iron Horse cavalry is enough to flatten the central and southern regions. Ning Qing voiced his concerns. Ning Cheng's current forces weren't a match for the Long Fei Yi. Therefore, Ning Qing didn't want to expose Bai Yanqing so quickly. He only wanted to send Bai Yanqing back to the army to stall for time so that he could think of a better way to make use of Jun Yixia's Iron Horse cavalry. Han Yunshi sneered in her heart. How could Ning Qing not be tempted by 100,000 Iron Horse cavalry? Ning Qing, I heard everything you said to him just now. That surnamed Bai will never leave Bai Yuqiao behind and return to the army alone. It's even more impossible for him to help you stop the war. If you insist, you'll only arouse his suspicion. Think about it carefully. But let me tell you, if you mess this up, you'll have to bear the consequences. Han Yunshi's voice was as cold as ice. Ning Qing finally lowered his head. This subordinate will listen to Princess's arrangements. After discussing all the details for the next day, Ning Qing went to check on all the ambushes before returning to the secret room. Han Yunshi didn't sleep. She leaned against the bed and closed her eyes to rest. Your Highness, everything has been arranged. Tomorrow we'll act according to the plan, Ning Qing said seriously. Is there anything else? Han Yunshi asked. Ning Qing shook his head. Han Yunshi didn't say anything else, thinking that he would leave. Who knew that Ning Qing wouldn't leave? Han Yunshi cast an interrogating gaze, but Ning Qing immediately avoided it. Gu will be here soon. This subordinate will wait for a while. Han Yunshi ignored him and continued to close her eyes to rest. At first, Ning Qing was drinking tea by himself. But gradually he couldn't help but raise his head to look at Han Yunshi quietly. The candlelight flickered and it was quiet. It was only at this moment that Ning Cheng's world was at peace. It was also only at this moment that Ning Qing could forget his identity, forget his responsibility, forget his hatred, and forget his ideals. Why didn't we meet earlier? Why didn't we never meet again? Why didn't we meet again in our next life? Why did we have to meet again in this life at this moment? Why did he only know who she was after he fell in love with her? Ning Qing retracted his gaze and looked at the palm of his left hand. The golden needle was hidden in his palm. It could be faintly seen through his skin. It was because of this needle that his left hand couldn't hold anything tightly. It was basically useless. Hiding it here, he wouldn't lose it. Not long after, Gu and Mu Ling arrived. Along the way, the guards had already explained everything to Gu and Mu Ling. He had been looking for his poison lass all over the world like a madman. But when she was standing in front of him, Gu just smiled foolishly. Before he found her, he was conflicted and didn't know how to face her. But now that he saw her, he didn't feel conflicted anymore. Everything didn't seem so important anymore. As long as she was safe and sound, she was his salvation. Poison lass. Gu wanted to say something but stopped. Such a flirtatious person at this moment was so silly that he looked adorable. We'll deal with Mute Granny another day. Han Yunshi said first. She didn't want Ning Qing to know too much. Gu saw the strange look in her eyes and immediately nodded. Deal. Chi brother, I'll help you deal with Bai first. You can do whatever you want. Mute Granny is? Ning Qing asked curiously. Master Ning doesn't need to worry about my and Poison Lass's private matters. Gu said unhappily. Ning Qing pretended that he didn't ask. He opened a map and began to explain their ambush in detail. Gu listened attentively. Han Yunshi saw Mu Ling's disappointed face and handed her a cup of tea. Younger sister Ling, drink a cup of tea to wake yourself up. Mu Ling jerked her head up and looked at Han Yunshi in disbelief. What did this woman just call her? As your older cousin, I have the duty to protect your safety. Stay here tomorrow and don't run around, understand? Han Yunxi said seriously. Mu Ling, finally reacted. That's right, Lady Tianxin was Lady Lianxin, her aunt. Then Han Yunxi was her older cousin. You're my older cousin, older sister? Mu Ling blinked her big watery eyes and muttered to herself for a long time. She only came back to her senses when Han Yunxi handed her a cup of tea. She snorted disdainfully. Don't even think about controlling me. I'm not your biological older cousin. I'm definitely controlling you. Han Yunxi didn't hold back. Mu Ling sat to the side in a fit of pique and drank her tea. She and Han Yunxi always clashed head-on like this. They rarely huddled together like sisters and talked about everything. However, she knew that Han Yunxi treated her even better than a biological sister. However, it wasn't because of their sisterly relationship that she didn't resent Han Yunxi for taking away her Qi brother. She knew better than anyone that even without Han Yunxi, Qi brother wouldn't have fallen in love with her. The next morning, the entire palace was still immersed in sleep. Bai Yanqing woke up in a daze and immediately noticed that there were movements around him. He hurriedly got off the bed and hesitated for a moment before he directly broke through the roof tiles and rushed up to the sky. Bai Yuqiao, who was in the side room, was awakened and followed him out. However, in an instant, from all directions from the lowest to the highest, there were a total of 10 circles of archers. Tens of thousands of arrows were fired at the same time, forcing the master and disciple to fall to the ground. Ningqing, how dare you trick the old man? Bai Yanqing was furious. If he still didn't understand the truth, he should end his own life. Ningqing didn't show up. Instead, he responded to Bai Yanqing with another round of fierce arrows. Little you, Bai Yanqing said coldly. Bai Yuqiao immediately held his sword and blocked the arrows for his master. Bai Yanqing closed his eyes and looked up to feel the direction of the wind. In the dark, Ningqing whispered, "Wind riding technique. He's going to poison us." "Don't be afraid of him." Han Yunxi snorted. Chapter 829. The movements of Bai Yanqing's hands revealed a strange and ancient aura. It was like a ritual of worship, but it also seemed like a technique. As his movements became faster and faster, Han Yunxi suddenly felt that the surrounding wind was gradually getting stronger. It really is the imperial wind technique. Ningqing whispered. The wind blew and the fog dispersed. It was impossible for Bai Yanqing to set up a poisonous fog here. Therefore, the fog was actually a cover. He was using the wind to poison them. Since Han Yunxi and Ningqing decided to make a move, they must be very confident. Not to mention Bai Yanqing, even if the venerable one of Tianshan Kenzo was here, he might not be able to escape unscathed in the face of 1,000 archers and 10,000 arrows. Bai Yanqing already understood this, so he didn't do anything useless. He directly used the imperial wind technique to poison them. Only the wind could blow past every archer present. As long as the wind was poisoned, no one would be spared. The wind blew from the south. The clothes and hair of the archers in the south were the first to be blown up. "Old devil, quick, take me into the wind," Han Yunxi said anxiously. Into the wind? Who was very puzzled. Ningqing was also puzzled. Wasn't Han Yunxi supposed to keep an eye on Bai Yanqing and be ready to neutralize the poison that Bai Yanqing put in the wind at any time? Why did she run into the wind? Don't talk nonsense. Hurry up. Han Yunxi couldn't be bothered to explain so much. Gu naturally did as he was told. Soon he carried Han Yunxi and soared into the sky from behind the wall of archers. The two figures leaped up like a startled swan, immediately attracting the attention of Bai Yanqing and Bai Yuqiao. The archers did not stop. Bai Yuqiao worked even harder to help his master out of this predicament. He had already been shot twice. Bai Yuqiao swung his sword and knocked down a circle of arrows. He turned around and looked at Bai Yanqing. "Master, Han Yunxi is in Ningqing's hands. We've been tricked." "Princess, what do you mean? The Wind Clan's sincerity can be seen by the sun and the moon. Why did you scheme against us?" Bai Yanqing asked angrily, as if he was still trying to salvage the situation. Han Yunxi had been brought to the wind by Gu. She looked down at Bai Yanqing from above and said with a smile, "The sincerity of the Feng clan can be shown by the sun and the moon. Why don't you show it to me now?" It was understandable that Ningqing was afraid of the Wind Clan's military strength. However, why would Han Yunshi hook up with Ning Qing? Han Yunshi was not stupid. She should know that the Northernly cavalry was the real force that could help her restore her country. Ning Qing might not have the ability to drive a wedge between her and the Wind Clan. If she had to choose between the D Clan and the Wind Clan, Han Yunshi would definitely choose the Wind Clan. Bai Yanqing's eyes were complicated. He could not figure out whether Han Yunshi was acting or really wanted to kill him. If she was acting, the reason was very simple. It was nothing more than testing the Wind Clan's sincerity. If she was serious, Bai Yanqing really could not think of a reason. The only time he used the Imperial Wind technique and the Poison technique at the same time was to save Jun Yixia. Even so, what could Han Yunshi suspect? Or was it because Jun Yixia had been unfaithful to her before, so she bore a grudge against him? Princess, how do you want the two of us to express our sincerity? Bai Yanqing asked. If he had no other choice, he would not aggravate the conflict and expose his movement technique. He did not plan on personally dealing with the Long Fei Yi. He had to make Han Yunshi go. He wanted the Eastern and Western Qin royal families to not be able to get married and be enemies for generations. He wanted this feud to never be resolved for all eternity. Whether it was East Qin or Western Qin, they were not worthy of love. They were not worthy of loving others. They would never be worthy. Hearing Bai Yanqing's question, Han Yunshi gave a cold laugh in her heart. Bai Yanqing would never think that she would expose the Wind Clan's plot. He must still have hope that he could escape this disaster. Don't even think about it. However, Han Yunshi did not mind playing with him. She raised her hand to signal the archers to stop. How do we express our sincerity? That depends on how sincere your Wind Clan is. Han Yunshi said with a laugh. If they didn't already know the truth, Ning Qing and Gu would have thought that she was joking with Bai Yanqing. Your Highness, the Wind Clan's head has 90,000 horses and is already on his way back. Adding on the 100,000 cavalry from Northern Li, the Wind Clan has 100,000 cavalry. 100,000 cavalry is enough to sweep through Cloud Realm continent for the princess and recover Western Qin. This is the greatest loyalty of my Wind Clan. Bai Yanqing deliberately gave Ning Qing a meaningful look before adding, Princess, no one can compare to the Wind Clan's loyalty. I asked the princess to understand. So it's like that. Han Yunshi looked pensive as she purposely dragged out her words. But that still can't convince me. How about this? Why don't you show Jun Yixia's sincerity with your death? As soon as she finished speaking, she immediately gave Ning Qing, who was hidden among the archers, a look. Ning Qing did not hesitate to give the order to shoot. In an instant, countless arrows rained down on the backs of Bai Yanqing and his disciple. Han Yunshi. Bai Yanqing was furious. Only now did he realize that he had been played by Han Yunshi. Life and death were on the line. He had no time to think. Even if the master and disciple worked together, they could not avoid such a sneak attack. Bai Yanqing resolutely used poison. In an instant, a strong gust of wind blew, causing everyone's clothes and hair to flutter in the wind. In other words, everyone was in the wind. Bai Yanqing had never been played like this in his life. He used the most terrible poison he had, the blood poison. Once the blood was in the wind, everyone in the wind would be poisoned in an instant. Those who were poisoned would bleed all over until their blood dried up and they died. Bai Yuqiao knew that her master had used poison. She also knew that no matter how fast the sword behind her was, it would not be faster than her master's poison. She ignored the arrows flying from behind and pulled her master's hand, pleading, Master. She wanted the antidote. However, Bai Yanqing casually shook her hand off. He stared coldly at Han Yunshi. Just as he shook off Bai Yuqiao's hand, a sharp arrow pierced through Bai Yuqiao's abdomen. In fact, if Bai Yuqiao was not behind her, this sword would have pierced through Bai Yanqing's back. That was because Ning Qing was the one who'd released the arrow. Bai Yuqiao immediately knelt down and threw herself to the ground. She stared at her master with wide eyes, her usually timid eyes finally showing a trace of hatred. Deep hatred. She had followed him since young and respected him like a father. In the end, her life was as cheap as a dog's. Bai Yuqiao was not satisfied. She used the last of her strength to pull out a dagger from her calf. However, before she could avenge herself, she fainted. She did not realize that the poison her master had placed in the wind was already gone. However, Bai Yanqing had long realized that this was the reason why he did not even care about the arrow behind his back and glared at Han Yunshi. This woman in an instant neutralized his poison. Rather than calling it neutralized, it was more accurate to say that she had absorbed all the poison. This woman had actually advanced to the second level of the poison storage space, enemy resistance. The reason why the second level of the poison storage space is called enemy resistance is because as long as there is poison that is a threat to the user, the poison storage space can absorb all the poison back. Bai Yanqing used a full 40 years to advance to the second level. How old is Han Yunqi this year? How is this possible? Bai Yanqing suddenly leapt into the air, sweeping away the arrows with his sword as he continued to use the wind to poison. This was the only way he could do. The reason why Han Yunqi stood in the wind was to put herself in a situation where the poison could threaten her, so that she could activate the poison storage space. On the other hand, if the poison around her was not a threat to her, the poison storage space would not be able to absorb all the poison. This was the only difference between the second and third level of the poison storage space. The third level of the poison storage space is called battle strategy, where one can freely absorb any poison in the world. Whether it was Han Yunqi or Bai Yanqing, they had not reached this level. Although both of them were at the second level, Han Yunqi was clearly superior. Because compared to Bai Yanqing, she had a few decades more to understand the third level, and had the opportunity to advance to the third level. Ning Qing was an outsider and could not tell that Bai Yanqing's poison had been neutralized, but Gu could tell. When Bai Yanqing released the poison, Gu could smell the poison, but before he could remember to take a closer look at what kind of poison it was, it had disappeared. In other words, before anyone was truly poisoned, the poison had disappeared into thin air. Poison lass, where's the poison? Gu was incredulous. I ate it. Han Yunqi laughed. Bring me to the wind and watch out for Bai Yanqing's surprise attack. I want to see how long he can last. Gu did not quite understand, but even if it was a trick, he would do as Poison Lass said. Just like that, Bai Yanqing used the Imperial Wind technique to constantly change the position of the wind, while Gu carried Han Yunqi and kept moving. Every time Bai Yanqing released the poison, Han Yunqi would point it at him. Not only did Bai Yanqing have to use the poison, he also had to deal with the thousands of archers around him. In just a short while, he was hit by several arrows. If not for his superb swordsmanship, he would have been pierced by thousands of arrows. Fortunately, with Gu around, Han Yunqi was able to move in time and safely. Ning Qing had forgotten about the main character, Bai Yanqing, as he looked up at Gu carrying Han Yunqi around, his eyes unblinking. Finally, Bai Yanqing could not take it anymore and shouted angrily, Han Yunqi, why? You have to give the Feng clan a reason. A sincere reason. Han Yunqi could not help but admire Bai Yanqing. Death was at hand, but he could still be so calm and shamelessly say that he was sincerely convinced, as if he was really innocent. When dealing with a shameless person, one could only be more shameless than him. Han Yunqi still seemed to be joking. All right, if you surrender, I will give you a sincere reason. How about it? Bai Yanqing was so angry that he almost spat out all the old blood in his body. After you are sincerely convinced, the old man will naturally surrender. Bai Yanqing roared angrily, dodging several sharp arrows with a sidestep, and then waved his sword, sweeping out a circle of powerful sword energy. Not only did it shake off the surrounding rain of arrows, it even shook off the two surrounding archers. Ning Qing gave the order, and the archers behind immediately filled in, not giving Bai Yanqing any time to escape. Uncle Bai, logically speaking, you should indeed surrender after you are sincerely convinced, but if you are not sincerely convinced, I have a way to capture you. Han Yunqi smiled, and Gu had already made his move. If it was a normal situation, Bai Yanqing would have already destroyed Gu's thorny vine seeds, but facing the rain of arrows and traps, he simply could not care less. 2 of the 3 thorny vine seeds fell to the ground, and in an instant thorny vines grew out like seaweed, surrounding Bai Yanqing but not completely surrounding him. Bai Yanqing immediately poisoned the thorny vines, but when all the thorny vines died, the archers all closed in and surrounded him at close range. Bai Yanqing gripped his long sword tightly, and Ning Qing sneered, Uncle Bai, your sword is fast, but I can guarantee that you won't be able to kill 1,000 of my people with one strike. Even if Bai Yanqing killed 100 people with one strike when he waved his sword, the remaining 900 people would definitely shoot arrows. At such a close distance, he did not even have the space to dodge. Bai Yanqing did not even look at Ning Qing, but looked directly at Han Yunqi and said coldly, You don't dare to kill me because Chapter 830. Han Yunxi wasn't someone who couldn't withstand provocation, but she really wanted to kill Bai Yanqing with her own hands. If it weren't for Bai Yanqing, Gu Beiyue wouldn't have fallen off the cliff, her identity wouldn't have been exposed, and she might still be foolishly staying by Long Fei Ye's side right now. No matter when Long Fei Yi would reveal her identity or start using her, at least she would have the chance to ask that question herself. At least she wouldn't be as tired and helpless as she was now. She'd been doing her best to stabilize the situation in Cloud Realm, to balance the powers of Eastern and Western Qin, and to delay the real confrontation. She'd done her best to do everything, but she still didn't know where she stood or which side she should lean towards. She didn't know the truth, so she kept telling herself not to be willful and not to make a random choice. Although she wasn't really a princess of Western Qin, she didn't want to let down a truly loyal family like the Di clan. As a princess of Western Qin, she had the right to refuse to revive her country, but she didn't have the right to use this identity to help Long Fei Yi become enemies with the Di clan and destroy the faith of Western Qin's loyal generals. As an independent woman from the modern era, she didn't want to let down her love. Long Fei Yi, if I wasn't a princess of Western Qin, I would like you. Long Fei Yi, do you know that I'm actually not a princess of Western Qin? Long Fei Yi, if I wasn't a princess of Western Qin, would you still like me? Today's pain was all caused by Bai Yanqing. Han Yunxi decided to be willful for once. If she killed Bai Yanqing, the Northern Dynasty's emperors wouldn't be able to threaten Jun Yixie anymore. That was why Bai Yanqing couldn't die yet. But Han Yunxi could cripple his hands. She pulled out Gu's sword and placed it on Bai Yanqing's shoulder. Seeing this, Ningqing and Gu were on high alert. The two of them stood guard beside Han Yunxi, guarding against Bai Yanqing's counterattack. After all, Han Yunxi was a woman who did not know any martial arts. It was very likely that she would counterattack and take Bai Yanqing as a hostage. You're right. I don't dare to kill you, but I can cripple you, Han Yunxi said coldly. Bai Yanqing laughed out loud. He was not afraid, nor did he show any signs of counterattacking. He kept laughing. Han Yunxi, you can't do it. Seeing that Gu and Ningqing were on guard, Han Yunxi held her sword with both hands and was about to slash Bai Yanqing's shoulder. At that moment, Bai Yanqing said coldly, Gu Beiyue is in my hands. If you cripple me, I guarantee that you'll never see Gu Beiyue again. As soon as he said that, Han Yunxi's sword stopped abruptly. Gu also grabbed her sword at almost the same time. Gu Beiyue? Everyone was shocked. Didn't Gu Beiyue fall off the cliff? Could it be that Bai Yanqing found him? How could that be? Han Yunxi didn't believe it. After Gu Beiyue had fallen off the cliff that night, they'd confirmed that the dark-robed assassin had left. Then Chu Shifeng had immediately led the shadow guard down to search for him. Bai Yanqing was the dark-robed assassin himself. There was no way he'd come down the cliff so quickly, much less find him before Chu Shifeng and the rest. Ridiculous, why should I believe you? Han Yunxi demanded in disbelief. Bai Yanqing took out a white jade hairpin from his sleeve. Han Yunxi's heart almost stopped at the sight of it. She recognized this hairpin. Gu Beiyue wore very few accessories on his body. In fact, you could say that he didn't have any at all. All his hair was held together by this simple hairpin. His snow-white robes and ink-black hair were enough to surpass all other brocade garments. No one would ever forget him for the rest of their lives. Every time Han Yunxi saw him, he'd used the same hairpin. How could Han Yunxi not recognize it? Why is Gu Beiyue in your hands? What did you do to him? Han Yunxi was so anxious that she almost lost control, but Ningqing grabbed Bai Yanqing by the collar and roared, You traitor! You knew he was a descendant of the Shadow Clan, but you still dared to attack him. Bai Yanqing, can you face the Imperial Clan? Are you worthy of your Wind Clan's ancestors? Fortunately, Gu was here. Fortunately, Gu hadn't lost all reason. Seeing Bai Yanqing silently stretch out his hand from behind his back, Gu immediately snatched the sword from Han Yunxi's hand and pointed it at his heart. You'd better behave yourself. Otherwise, my sword won't have eyes. Gu's words reminded Han Yunxi and Ningqing, and the two regained their senses. The surrounding archers pressed on even tighter, and Bai Yanqing could only put down his hand. He looked at him suspiciously. Ningqing, why do you say that old man killed Gu Beiyue? You're slandering old man and slandering the Wind Clan's loyalty. What are your intentions? Bai Yanqing couldn't figure out why Han Yunxi would turn against the Wind Clan. After hearing Ning Cheng's words, he mistakenly thought that Han Yunxi had been instigated by Ning Cheng. Although he was indeed the black-clothed assassin, how could Ning Cheng know about this? Even Gu Beiyue and Han Yunxi, the two parties involved, didn't know the truth. How could Ning Cheng have guessed it? This must be Ning Cheng's mistake. Han Yunxi laughed. He took out a poison. This poison was none other than the blood at dawn that she had used on Bai Yanqing's shoulder. This was a newly grown poison from the poison pool. Seeing this, Bai Yanqing was shocked. On the night he assassinated Gu Beiyue, the poisonous beast bit his shoulder. The poisonous beast's teeth were poisonous. He was shocked at first, thinking that the poisonous beast had recovered. Later, he found out that the poison wasn't from the poisonous beast's teeth, but something that had been added to the teeth. He didn't have time to think about it carefully. He immediately determined that the poison was the commonly seen throat sealing at dawn, and put it into his poison storage space. After that, he didn't think much about it. After all, Han Yunxi wasn't the only one who had the throat sealing at dawn poison. Han Yunxi had used this poison on him, so he wouldn't leave any evidence behind. He never thought that the poison that night wasn't the throat sealing at dawn, but the new poison in Han Yunxi's hands. At first glance, the toxicity was very similar to the throat sealing at dawn, but in reality the antidote was very different. At least with his ability, he wouldn't be able to cure the poison in a day or two. This poison would take effect in one night. He couldn't wait for a day or two. Therefore, if he didn't ask Han Yunxi for the antidote, he would definitely die. Bai Yanqing was shocked. He didn't think that Han Yunxi's thoughts were more meticulous than he thought. However, he didn't give up. He didn't understand. He was still alive, so why would Han Yunxi suspect him? What do you mean? He continued to play dumb. This is called blood at dawn. It's my new poison. There are only 2 copies in this world. One is with me and the other was put into your poison storage space that night. If you don't believe me, you can go and look for it. Han Yunxi said with a cold smile. Bai Yanqing was dumbfounded. He couldn't speak for a long time. How did Han Yunxi know that he had a poison storage space? That night when the little thing bit you, the poison immediately disappeared after you were poisoned. If that wasn't because of the poison storage space, then what was it? Han Yunxi said coldly. Also, the one who fought with me in the lost path was also you. The new poison I used at the end, you couldn't cure it. You just put it into your poison storage space. You pretended to spend 2 hours to cure the poison, but that was just a smokescreen. You were afraid that I would guess that you had a poison storage space forever. Unfortunately, I guessed it. Bai Yanqing, you're not Jun Yixie's servant. You're Jun Yixie's master. The one who spread the poison fog on Fishery Island was none other than you. You're not just the head of the Wind Clan, you're also a descendant of the Poison Sect. You knew that Gu Beiyue was a descendant of the Shadow Clan, but you still killed him. You're disloyal to Western Qin. You knew that I was a descendant of the Poison Sect, but you refused to acknowledge me. You're disloyal to the Poison Sect. Han Yunxi exposed the truth with every word of her accusation. Bai Yanqing stared blankly at her, speechless for a long time. Everything he'd carefully planned had been seen through by this girl. That was why she and Ning Cheng had worked together to trick him into the palace and lure him into a trap. Even what Ning Cheng had done to Gu last night had been a show for him to see. Han Yunxi hesitated, then continued. Also, you used Tianshan Kenzo's sword skills to assassinate Gu Beiyue. You purposely imitated the Long Fei Yi in order to sow discord between me and the Long Fei Yi, as well as Gu Beiyue and the Long Fei Yi. If I'm not wrong, if I don't expose you today, you'll soon tell Ning Cheng that the dark-robed assassin used Tianshan Kenzo's sword skills to assassinate Gu Beiyue. You want to add oil to the flames of hatred between Eastern and Western Qin. You want nothing more than for Ning Cheng and I to lose our minds and mobilize our troops south to fight the Long Fei Yi to the death. You, on the other hand, are waiting for Jun Yixie's battle steed. You want to be the fisherman. Ning Cheng was stunned. Only now did he know that the dark-robed assassin knew Tianshan Kenzo's sword skills. If Han Yunxi had told him earlier, he definitely wouldn't have been as rational as he was now. He definitely wouldn't have believed that this was all Bai Yanqing's scheme. Ning Cheng couldn't help but feel heartache when he saw Han Yunxi's angry expression. This woman must have thought through everything so deeply to be able to weigh everything so well. She knew what to say and what not to say. She knew when to say and when not to say. Ning Cheng even felt a bit guilty about his previous suspicions. Han Yunxi secretly let out a sigh of relief. She had finally found a chance to mention the Tianshan Kenzo's sword skills. If she said it at this point, Ningqing wouldn't blame her for hiding it. By Yanqing, the enemy's hatred can never compare to the betrayal of your family. Western Qin's biggest enemy is your Wind clan, followed by East Qin. Han Yunxi's words were actually for Ningqing to hear. Bai Yanqing was completely convinced. He only had one question that he couldn't understand. Han Yunxi, how did you know that the poison in my shoulder was cured that night? Not to mention being far away, even if they were close, they wouldn't have been able to tell. That kind of poison needed time to activate. So you admit it? Han Yunxi gave a cold laugh. Tell me why. Bai Yanqing was a bit excited. He had failed because of this detail, so how could he be satisfied if he didn't figure it out? I can tell you why. Tell me, what is your relationship with my mother? Han Yunxi coldly asked. Bai Yanqing was surprised at first, but then he broke out in laughter. He avoided this topic and threw the white jade hairpin to Han Yunxi. Let me go immediately. Otherwise, I guarantee that in 3 days, Gu Beiyue will be cut into 10,000 pieces. Immediately hand over Gu Beiyue. Otherwise, I guarantee that I'll cut you into 10,000 pieces right now. Han Yunxi sternly warned. Who would have thought that Bai Yanqing would have an indifferent expression, please? The chips were even, so they were the winners. Chapter 831. Bai Yanqing's attitude was unyielding. Even when Han Yunxi's sword was about to hit him, he still didn't move an inch to stare calmly at Han Yunxi. In the end, Han Yunxi was defeated. Everything came to an abrupt halt as her sword touched Bai Yanqing's body. Bai Yanqing was the head of the Wind clan, while Gu Beiyue was the only descendant of the Shadow clan. Between the two, Bai Yanqing's value was obviously higher than Gu Beiyue's. Thus, if it was a life for a life, Han Yunxi and the rest would have profited. Gu Beiyue's death would have been worth it. But how could Han Yunxi measure Gu Beiyue's life in terms of value? She couldn't do it. As soon as Han Yunxi stopped, Bai Yanqing's lips rose into a mocking smile. He long knew that Han Yunxi wouldn't be able to do it. Suddenly, Ningqing pressed down on Han Yunxi's sword and thrust it forward. The blade was about to pierce Bai Yanqing's body. Don't. Han Yunxi yanked the sword back and tossed it aside. Bai Yanqing didn't move or speak but began to laugh coldly. The sneer on his lips was an eyesore to Ningqing. Princess, this subordinate believes that Gu Beiyue's sacrifice will be a glorious one. His death will be the Shadow clan's greatest glory. Ningqing declared. Han Yunxi finally understood why Ningqing was willing to give Ning in to Emperor Tianhui and Ningjing to the Tang clan. She should have realized long ago that Ningqing was even willing to sacrifice his own little sister for the sake of Western Qin's imperial clan and its mission and glory. How could anyone else do the same? Han Yunxi stared blankly at Bai Yanqing and muttered, "But I can't do it." Princess. Ningqing wanted to persuade her, but Han Yunxi raised her hand to stop him. She knew what Ningqing wanted to say. Ningqing wanted to compare the power of the Wind clan and the Shadow clan. As long as they crippled Bai Yanqing and handed Bai Yanqing to the Northern Dynasty's emperors, the Northern Dynasty's emperors would have the capital to restrain Jun Yixia. At that time, the Northern Li royal family would have their cavalry, while Jun Yixia would have his war horses. The two of them would be evenly matched and they would be able to fight for at least a year and a half. In this way, the Ning family would have no worries about the future. Of the Shadow clan, only Gu Beiyue remained. Moreover, Gu Beiyue's shadow technique hadn't fully recovered yet. With Gu Beiyue's life, why wouldn't it be worth it to ruin the Wind clan's scheme? They had spent so much effort not to raise the flag and even concealed her whereabouts. Wasn't it all for this moment? Ningqing Western Qin has been restored, but the brave and loyal soldiers of Western Qin have all been sacrificed. What's the point? Han Yunxi asked. Princess, now is not the time to talk about this. On this matter, Ningqing didn't want to give in at all, even if he was facing the princess of Western Qin. He drew his sword, but Gu stopped him. You don't have the right to make a decision for Gu Beiyue. I know his choice. Ningqing exerted force, but he couldn't resist Gu's strength. Do you think that if you let him go now he will let Gu Beiyue go? Ningqing asked angrily. At least, Gu Beiyue didn't die for Western Qin. Han Yunxi insisted. The Shadow clan's mission is to die for Western Qin. So is the D clan. Ning Qing said loudly. This sentence wasn't actually said by him but by his grandfather and father. They told him before they died and he would never forget it. This princess refuses. Han Yunqi was also angry. This was the first time she acknowledged her identity as Western Qin's princess. She was telling Ning Qing that she wasn't negotiating with him but ordering him. Princess. Ning Qing couldn't accept it but he didn't dare to disobey. Han Yunqi looked at the archers and Leng ordered, "Everyone retreat." Ning Qing clenched his right fist. He was full of dissatisfaction but he could only hold it in. He gave the leader of the archers a look and the 1,000 archers retreated. Bai Yanqing slowly patted the dust off his body and tidied his clothes. He was about to leave when Han Yunqi said coldly, "If you dare to hurt Gu Beiyue, you'll have to bear the consequences." Cold laughter. Bai Yanqing swaggered off. As for Bai Yuqiao, he had forgotten about him. Perhaps he thought that his disciple had been shot to death by the arrows. The moment Bai Yanqing left, Ning Qing threw his sword to the ground. His originally cold face was frighteningly cold. Even Ningen, who had just brought Mu Linger over, didn't dare to say anything. Gu didn't care about him. He only had eyes for Poison Girl. Poison Girl, you're still Qi Brothers' Poison Girl. Gu muttered to himself. What? Han Yunqi glanced at him. I'm scolding you. Forget it if you didn't hear it. Gu teased. No one knew how fast his heart was beating just now. He was afraid that the Poison Girl he liked would become a princess who wanted to restore her country. She would sacrifice Gu Beiyue for the sake of righteousness. He couldn't imagine if Han Yunqi made the decision to sacrifice Gu Beiyue. Would he continue to protect her unconditionally or say no to her? Fortunately, Poison Girl was still the same Poison Girl. Han Yunqi didn't pursue Gu's joke. She looked at Ning Cheng's cold side profile and felt an indescribable pain in her heart. Ning Cheng, she was about to speak when Ning Cheng turned to leave. Ning Cheng, you've sacrificed so many times. This time it's the royal family's turn to sacrifice for you. Han Yunqi shouted. Ning Cheng was stunned when he heard this. Ningen was stunned as well. Tears welled up in her eyes, but it wasn't clear if it was because she felt wronged or relieved. Ning Cheng stood there for a long time before he finally turned around. He stopped discussing Gu Beiyue and said seriously, "Princess, we have to find a way to meet the Northern Dynasty's emperors as soon as possible." Han Yunqi shook her head. "No, there's someone even more anxious than us." Who? Ning Cheng asked. Long Fei Yi. Han Yunqi hadn't said this name in a long time. Long Fei Yi? Ning Cheng didn't understand. As long as we leak accurate information to Long Fei Yi, he'll definitely be more anxious than us to make a move. Han Yunqi paused and decided to go all out. Long Fei Yi has always had spies in Northern Li. The horse plague in Northern Li was caused by him. Ning Cheng was shocked when he heard this. He didn't expect Long Fei Yi to have already extended his hand into Northern Li. He already found out that Jun Yixia was buying horses from the Winter Crow tribe, but he might not have been able to find out the number, Han Yunqi said truthfully. Although Jun Yixia's 100,000 cavalry could destroy the Ning clan army, Long Fei Yi would have to face 100,000 cavalry if the Ning clan army died. His soldiers wouldn't be able to fight against 100,000 cavalry. Therefore Long Fei Yi and Ning Qing were on the same side. They both hoped that the Northern Li imperial family could restrain the Feng clan. Ning Qing wasn't stupid. He pondered for a moment and said in a low voice, "The D clan will definitely send an envoy. If Long Fei Yi cooperates with Northern Li, Western Qin will be in danger." Han Yunqi couldn't deny this point. At this time Mu Linger shouted, "Ah, Heishi, Bai Yuqiao is still alive." Everyone looked in the direction of the voice and saw that Bai Yuqiao, who had been shot several times, was actually moving her hand. "Save her," everyone said in unison. Bai Yuqiao was Jun Yixia's junior sister and Bai Yanqing's disciple. She definitely knew everything about Bai Yanqing. Not only did everyone say in unison, but their first thought was, "We must find out the whereabouts of Gu Beiyue from Bai Yuqiao." Han Yunqi and Mu Ling hurriedly performed first aid on Bai Yuqiao. Ningen quickly found an imperial physician. After a round of emergency treatment, Bai Yuqiao's life was finally saved, but she wouldn't wake up for a while. Han Yunqi and Ning Qing plotted and sent the envoy to Northern Li. After that they were finally free to talk to Gu and Mu Ling alone. However, before they could speak, Ningen came over. Your Highness, this subordinate has personally selected a few servants to follow Long Zun to Medical City. Would you like to take a look? Ning asked respectfully. Han Yunxi only felt that Ning An's attitude was a little different, but she couldn't put her finger on it. She didn't know that it was her words, "The imperial family sacrificed themselves for you," that had shaken Ning An's heart. It had made this woman who had long turned to ash, see the meaning of life. Her previous respect was due to Han Yunxi's status, but now it was due to her respect for Han Yunxi as a person. Han Yunxi glanced at Gu, a complicated look flashing through her eyes. In the end she agreed to Ning An's request, and let's go take a look. Ning An followed Han Yunxi's instructions and arranged for an old maid, a eunuch, a palace maid, 3 imperial bodyguards and a child to play with Long Zun. Gu and Mu Ling didn't take this matter to heart. The two of them waited on the side for Ning An to leave so that they could talk to Han Yunxi. They originally thought that Han Yunxi would be done with just a glance, but who knew that Han Yunxi would walk over and seriously size up each person from head to toe. Gu faintly smelled the scent of poison, but he wasn't sure, so he didn't ask anything. After a careful inspection, Han Yunxi nodded to Ning An. Are you sending them off today? How long will it take to reach Medical City? Yes, immediately. It'll take at least 7 days to reach Medical City from here, Ning An replied. Han Yunxi took a purple tassel. Take this and go directly to Vice Academy Head Shen. Your Highness, this isn't this. Ning An didn't understand. Expose our whereabouts? Han Yunxi asked. Ning An had her doubts. Han Yunxi replied, previously we concealed our whereabouts to deceive Bai Yanqing. Now that it's over we naturally have to hang the flag. Have Ning Qing prepare, I'm going to personally lead the expedition. As soon as she finished speaking, Ning Qing came in through the door. This subordinate has already prepared everything. I'll escort the princess to the battlefield at any time. Han Yunxi didn't stop delaying. She would delay for as long as she could. After all, if she personally led the expedition she would become an enemy of Long Fei Yi. However, she knew that Ning Qing wouldn't let her delay any longer. She also couldn't find a reasonable reason to delay. Rather than delaying any longer and arousing Ning Cheng's suspicions, it was better to follow Ning Cheng's wishes and go to the battlefield. At least, she would have a chance to see Long Fei Yi. No matter what, Long Fei Yi would go to the battlefield. Long Zun's retainers were heading north with her questions. It would take them 7 days to reach Medical City. As long as Shen Jueming saw them, he'd definitely see her questions. She trusted that he'd pass on her message to Long Fei as well. She was sincerely heading north, but she herself was keeping an eye on the Western Qin princess. She would wear a mask of hatred and head south to see Long Fei Yi. From here to the battlefield, it would only take about 7 days. Long Fei Yi, if you have the heart, then find a way to meet him. After Han Yunxi and Ning Qing finished discussing the matter of raising the flag, Gu and Mu Ling finally had time to speak with Han Yunxi alone. Gu said, Chapter 832. Gu asked, Poison Girl, did you poison him just now? Gu couldn't figure out why Han Yunxi would poison Long Zun's servant. Although he couldn't tell what kind of poison it was, he was sure that it wasn't a strong poison. It was a slow-acting poison. Shoo. Han Yunxi whispered. If Ning Cheng's men heard about this, she probably wouldn't be able to clear her name even if she jumped into the Yellow River. Gu leaned closer. Tell me secretly? Mu Ling also immediately leaned over. I'll just eavesdrop. In just one night Mu Ling had already freed herself from the disappointment of last night. On this mainland she was definitely the girl with the best self-healing ability. Of course it was only limited to heartache. And when it came to physical injuries, Gu was the one with the best self-healing ability. In this aspect the two of them could be considered a match made in heaven. Han Yunxi only replied with 2 words, it's a secret. I won't tell anyone. Gu immediately promised. Me too. Before Mu Ling could finish her sentence, Han Yunxi said, call me big sister and I'll tell you. Mu Ling immediately turned her head away. Humph. Girl, hurry up and call me big sister. Gu urged domineeringly. Mu Ling immediately turned her head. She looked like she was going to call out, but when she saw Gu's beautiful face, she just let out a humph. Han Yunxi was sure that Mu Ling wouldn't call out. Gu pursed his lips and couldn't be bothered with her. Han Yunqi, do you hate Long Feiyi? Do you want to take revenge? Do you want to fight with him? Will you use poison on him? Mu Ling suddenly asked a series of questions. In fact, after seeing Han Yunqi last night, she was anxious to clarify this matter. She asked on behalf of Qi brother. Han Yunqi's eyes dimmed as she asked, Ling, do you still remember Mute Granny? Long Feiyi killed him. I had my suspicions back then, but you didn't believe me. Mu Ling anger was ignited in an instant. Her feelings for Mute Granny were no less than her feelings for her own grandmother. Otherwise she wouldn't have dared to stop Long Feiyi's carriage. In fact, now that she thought about it carefully, she could also guess that half of the reason why she stopped the carriage was because of Qi brother's instigation. In other words, Qi brother actually knew the truth long ago. However, no matter what, she would not say anything bad about Qi brother in front of Han Yunqi. Han Yunqi looked at Gu, but Gu immediately avoided her gaze. However, he quickly turned back and said, I lied to you. Why? Han Yunqi asked. Gu and Long Feiyi had always been on opposite sides. Gu had no reason to lie to her about this matter. Moreover, with his character, it would be strange if he didn't use any means to expose Long Feiyi's weakness. This was too illogical. Han Yunqi was dissatisfied with Gu's deception, but she couldn't figure out the reason. Moreover, there was another matter that she couldn't understand. Why? Gu's eyes flashed with bitterness. The reason was none other than his agreement with Long Feiyi. He would help Long Feiyi keep the secret of Mute Granny's death, and Long Feiyi would help him keep the secret of immortality. Gu Qishao told him the truth of the past. He had failed to kidnap Mute Granny at the Yu Pavilion, and then plotted to expose Long Feiyi. However, Han Yunqi had helped Long Feiyi instead, causing him to lose the entire Medicine Ghost Valley. He only told her the truth up to here. Poison Girl, the reason is very simple. It's because you believe him and not me. No matter what I do, you won't believe me, right? Gu questioned her word by word. His tone was fierce and cold. Poison Girl, actually I didn't lie to you. It's you who didn't believe me. What right do you have to question me? He was so serious as he questioned her seriously. Han Yunqi was stunned. She felt as if her heart had been kicked by Gu. It was so painful that her soul was awakened. This was indeed the truth. But why did she suddenly feel so uncomfortable? This was the man who had been mischievous towards her since the first time they met. No matter how cruelly she rejected this man, he would never be fierce or cold to her. But now he was suddenly so cold to her. How deeply had she hurt him back in the Medicine Ghost Valley? He was trying his best to expose the truth about Long Feiyi and help her. But she was unreasonable and took away the Medicine Ghost Valley that he had painstakingly built. Han Yunqi recalled Gu's experiences when he was young. She couldn't imagine how much effort and price this guy had paid to establish the Medicine Ghost Valley. Han Yunqi stared at Gu in a daze. Her hands in her sleeves had long been clenched. Her nails dug deep into her palms and she seemed to be punishing herself. Han Yunqi was disgusted by herself for the first time. Mu Ling watched from the side. She didn't dare to make a sound. He was very surprised. Last night, Qi brother was still shouting that he wanted to apologize. But why was he questioning and scolding Han Yunqi like this when he saw her? Would Han Yunqi believe him if he didn't use such a cruel method? Wouldn't she insist on a reasonable explanation? Gu had no other choice. Looking at Han Yunqi's guilty and hurt expression, his heart ached so much that he almost couldn't help but pull her into his arms and tell her the truth. He wanted to tell her that the Medicine Ghost Valley wasn't taken away by her, but that he had willingly given it to her. If he hadn't willingly given it to her, even Long Feiyi wouldn't have been able to take away the Medicine Ghost Valley from him, let alone her unreasonable words back then. After a while, Han Yunqi looked up and said calmly, "Old ghost, I'm sorry." "Poison lass, I'm sorry," Gu said almost at the same time. However, he said it in his heart. "It's no use apologizing. Tell me, how are you going to compensate me?" Gu's tone was still serious. Before Han Yunqi could answer, he said very seriously, "How about you compensate me with your body?" Han Yunqi was stunned. Mu Ling was even more dumbfounded. Only Gu suddenly burst out laughing. He laughed very happily and said, "Poison lass, think about it." Han Yunqi finally heaved a sigh of relief. This guy could still joke. At least it meant that he was fine. He kicked Gu away. Mu Linger's pale face finally regained some color. Old ghost, so you were also the one who tried to assassinate Long Fei Yi in the U prison? Han Yunqi still asked directly, weren't you stabbed in the heart by Long Fei Yi back then? How? Han Yunqi's eyes stared at Gu's heart. Mu Linger suddenly shouted, what? There's actually such a thing? Chi brother, why didn't you tell me? Gu rolled his eyes at her. What are you making a fuss about? Long Fei Yi made a mistake. He didn't stab my heart at all back then. He missed. As he spoke, he tore open his clothes. What kind of monster do you all think I am? How can I still live after being stabbed in the heart? Mu Linger immediately covered her eyes. Hooligan. Han Yunqi looked at him seriously. She had to admit that Gu was more beautiful than a woman, but his body was definitely a man's. His chest muscles were firm and well-defined, making one's imagination run wild. Han Yunqi had seen more attractive men than this, so she didn't have time to think too much. She looked seriously at Gu's heart. There was indeed no wound, but beside his heart about 3 inches away there was a scar. In fact, if she looked carefully she would definitely find that the scar was actually a new one. It was at most 3 days ago. However, Han Yunqi didn't go so far as to touch him. Mu Linger's fingers revealed a gap. When she saw Chi brother's chest, her little face immediately turned crimson, as if it was on fire and was about to burst into flames. Although Long Fei Yi firmly believed that he had stabbed the assassin's heart, Han Yunqi still believed Gu when she saw the wound. It was a thrilling battle at night, so it was normal for her to make a mistake. How could Han Yunqi imagine that there were really immortals in this world? Han Yunqi's doubts about Gu were finally resolved. Afraid that Han Yunqi would ask more questions, Gu quickly closed his lapel and changed the topic. Poison girl, if you want to lead the army to the south, Chi brother will accompany you. We'll kill Long Fei Yi. You can't trust his words anymore. Gu couldn't figure out why Long Fei Yi had killed Mute Granny, but now he understood. Long Fei Yi had killed Mute Granny to hide Han Yunqi's identity. Compared to Mute Granny's lies, Long Fei Yi knew that Han Yunqi was a descendant of Western Qin, but he still used her. His crime was unforgivable. The descendants of the Eastern Western Qin royal family had fought fair and square, and the winner was king while the loser was in the wrong. Gu despised people who used women. Han Yunqi's heart was filled with emotions. Even a free and easy person like Gu believed that the descendants of the Eastern Western Qin royal family were old enemies and would always be enemies, not to mention other people. This was also the reason why she didn't let Gu and Mu Linger help her pass a message to Long Fei Yi. How could she explain that she didn't hate Long Fei Yi to make Gu and Mu Linger believe her? How could a Western Qin princess not hate an East Qin prince? How could she let Gu send that kind of letter to Long Fei Yi and ask Long Fei Yi about his feelings for her? She understood how well Gu Qishao treated her. Gu and Mu Linger weren't from the Eastern Western Qin camp, so the hatred between the Eastern and Western Qin had nothing to do with them. Han Yunqi didn't want to get too deeply involved with them. After all, she had to leave a way out for them. She was clearer than anyone about the consequences of becoming enemies with Long Fei Yi. Old ghost Linger, can you help me with something? It's very important, I only trust you too. Han Yunqi lowered her voice. Speak. Gu said without any hesitation. Wake up Bai Yuqiao, interrogate Bai Yuqiao and find Gu Beiyue. Han Yunqi seriously said. Even if it was Ning Cheng's people, she didn't trust them. Gu Beiyue was in Bai Yanqing's hands, so no one knew what was going on. If she let Ning Cheng's people rescue him, she couldn't guarantee that Ning Cheng wouldn't choose to sacrifice Gu Beiyue again in order to capture Bai Yanqing. Thus she only trusted Gu Qishao on this matter. Gu's face turned serious and he said in a low voice, I'm indebted to him. No matter which tribe he is from, I'll definitely save him. I'll definitely save him too. Mu Linger also said seriously. Chi brother's benefactor was her benefactor. Ning Qing still trusts me now. I'll tell him later to leave this matter to the two of you. Bai Yuqiao will stay here. He and I will head south tomorrow, Han Yunqi said. As long as she and Ning Qing went south tomorrow, it would be much easier for Gu to deal with Ning and understood. I'll definitely do it. Gu's eyes flashed with a sinister glint. Han Yunqi really did manage to convince Ning Qing. The next day, Ning Qing officially acknowledged Han Yunqi's identity and announced it to the world, confirming the authenticity of the rumors. Han Yunshi hung the Western Qin military flag and led the troops stationed around the imperial city to escort Han Yunshi to the south. She was going to personally lead an expedition. Long Feiyi had just arrived at the military camp when he received the news. Mo said, "This is Han Yunshi paying back the debt she owed to Pill Fiend Pharmacy. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."